The desert didn't care if you were ready. Olivia learned that the hard way, crouched behind a sandstone outcrop with her dress torn at the knee and her hands slick with sweat. The revolver felt wrong in her grip, too heavy, too cold, too real. She'd never fired a gun before yesterday. Never needed to. Back in Philadelphia, the worst thing she'd faced was her stepmother's cutting remarks over breakfast. Out here, the worst thing had teeth. "Come on out, sweetheart," the voice rolled across the scrubland, thick with amusement. "We ain't gonna hurt you much." Liar. She'd seen what they did to the stagecoach driver, seen the way they'd kicked his body after he stopped moving, casual as men shaking dust from their boots. 3 bullets left. She'd counted them twice, hands shaking so hard the cylinder rattled, one for each of the men still standing, except there weren't 3. There were 5. The math didn't work, and math had always been her friend. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." A different voice now, younger, almost conversational. Boots crunched on gravel somewhere to her left. "Jimmy's getting impatient, and when Jimmy gets impatient, things get messy." Olivia pressed her spine against the rock, feeling every sharp edge through the ruined fabric of her traveling dress. The blue one. The nice one she'd saved for. The one that was supposed to make a good first impression at Harrison Creek School, where she'd been hired, sight unseen, to teach children their letters and sums. Only there was no Harrison Creek School. The land agent had made it up. Sold her a lie wrapped in train tickets and a handwritten contract that wasn't worth the paper it wasted. By the time she'd figured it out, she was 3 territories past broke, stranded in a town that barely qualified as a town, with exactly $4 and a trunk full of books nobody wanted. The Stagecoach North was supposed to fix that. Supposed to carry her to Redstone, where she'd heard they needed a schoolteacher. Real this time. Probably. Instead, it carried her here. To this. "Found her!" The shout came from behind. How did they get behind? And Olivia spun, finger tightening on the trigger before her brain caught up. The gun bucked. The sound cracked across the valley like thunder, and somewhere a man yelped. Not a scream. A yelp. She'd missed. 2 bullets. "Hell, she's got fight!" Laughter, rough and delighted. "I like this one." Olivia ran. Not smart. Not strategic. Just pure animal panic, legs pumping beneath her skirts as she scrambled across the broken ground. Her boot caught on sagebrush and she went down hard, palms scraping rock, the gun almost flying from her grip. There she goes. Hands grabbed her ankle. She kicked backward, felt her heel connect with something soft, heard a grunt. The hands let go. She lurched forward, half crawling, half running, her heart beating so loud it drowned out everything except the blood rushing in her ears. The valley opened before her, endless, indifferent, offering nowhere to hide. Just scrub and stone and the kind of emptiness that swallowed people whole. Behind her, boots drummed closer. She couldn't outrun them, couldn't outfight them, couldn't... A gunshot split the air, but it didn't come from behind her. The sound rolled down from somewhere high and north, echoing off the canyon walls. One of her pursuers cursed, stumbling. Another shot followed, deliberate, precise. Dust kicked up near the youngest one's feet, and he backpedaled fast, arms windmilling. "The hell? Someone's up on the ridge." Olivia didn't stop running, but she risked a glance back. The men had scattered, crouching low, hands on their own weapons, as they scanned the high ground. For a moment, everything hung suspended. Her gasping for air, them searching for the shooter, the desert holding its breath. Then she saw him, a rider coming down the slope like gravity had personally invited him. The horse was tall and dark, and the man on its back sat like he'd been born there. He had a rifle across his lap and a hat pulled low, and even from a distance, Olivia could feel the weight of him. Not size, but presence. The kind that made space rearrange itself. He didn't hurry, didn't shout, just rode straight at 5 armed men like it was the least interesting thing he'd do all day. "That's Cowboy," someone hissed. The name landed like a stone in water. Ripples of unease spread through the group, their bravado cracking. "We weren't doing nothing," the leader called out, but his voice had lost its edge. "Just having some fun." The rider, Calloway, didn't respond. He stopped his horse maybe 20 yards out, close enough that Olivia could see his face now. All hard angles and sun-weathered skin, dark eyes that swept across the scene and recorded everything. Not old, but not young either. Somewhere in that stretch of years where boys turn into something heavier. Fun, he repeated finally. His voice was low, almost quiet, but it carried. That what you call it? She shot at us first. Did she hit you? Silence. Then she's got worse aim than you got sense. Calloway shifted in his saddle, the movement small but deliberate. His hand rested on his thigh, inches from the rifle. And you're still here. The leader spat into the dirt. This ain't your business. I'm making it my business. There's 5 of us. I counted. Something passed between them then. Some calculation Olivia didn't have the experience to read, but she saw the result, shoulders dropping, hands easing away from holsters, the fight bleeding out like air from a punctured tire. Ain't worth it, one of them muttered. Yeah? You gonna explain that to Jimmy? I'll explain it. Calloway's voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen, didn't need to. Tell Jimmy that Rhett Calloway says he can come find me himself if he's got an objection. He knows where I live. The name seemed to settle it. One by one, the men backed toward their horses, their retreat trying hard to look like a choice. The leader lingered longest, jaw tight, but eventually he turned and swung into his saddle. This ain't over, he said. It is for today. They rode out slowly, too proud to run, but not proud enough to stay. Olivia watched them disappear into the heat shimmer, her legs shaking so badly she had to lock her knees to stay upright. Then it was just her and the stranger and a lot of empty desert. Calloway dismounted in one smooth motion, looping his reins over his arm as he walked toward her. Up close, he was taller than she'd thought, broad through the shoulders, with a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile somewhere around the same time it learned what disappointment tasted like. You hurt? He asked. Olivia shook her head, then nodded, then shook it again because she didn't actually know. Everything felt numb and sharp at the same time. Let me see your hands. She held them out automatically, palms up. They were scraped raw, embedded with grit and starting to bleed. He frowned, but didn't touch her, just studied the damage with a clinical eye. You'll live, he said. Might sting for a while. Thank you. Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. Thank you. I know what they were going to do. He cut her off, not unkindly, but firmly, like he didn't need her to finish the sentence. Where's your people? Dead. The word felt strange, too simple for what it meant. The driver. They killed him when he tried to... Where were you headed? Redstone. He glanced at the sun, gauging time and distance with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. That's 2 days north. You got supplies? Water? I had a canteen. She looked around vaguely, but couldn't remember where she'd dropped it. And a trunk on the coach. The coach is kindling by now. He said it matter of fact. No sympathy, just statement. What else you got? Olivia looked down at herself, at her ruined dress, her scraped hands, the revolver still clutched like a lifeline. That's all. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not pity, exactly. More like recognition. The look of someone who'd seen this particular kind of disaster before. You know how to ride? A little. A lie. She'd ridden exactly twice, both times on a gentle mare at her cousin's estate, with a groom hovering nearby. He studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he could see straight through her. My ranch is 3 hours southwest. You can make it that far if you don't fall off. I'm not going to fall off. Then let's go. He turned and walked back to his horse without waiting for agreement, like her compliance was a foregone conclusion. And maybe it was. What else was she going to do? Stay here and wait for those men to come back? Wait, she called after him. I don't even know. What do you want? He paused, one hand on the saddle, and looked back at her. Want? For helping me. There has to be. People do all kinds of things. He swung up onto his horse, settling into the saddle with the ease of long practice. Most of them are stupid. Some of them are decent. I'm too tired to figure out which this is. He offered his hand. She stared at it. You coming or not? Olivia took his hand. His grip was rough, calloused, strong enough to pull her up behind him without visible effort. The horse shifted beneath the extra weight but didn't protest. She tried to find somewhere to put her hands that didn't feel presumptuous, finally settling for gripping the back of the saddle. "Hold on tighter than that," Calloway said, "unless you want to test that not falling off theory real quick." She gripped his waist instead, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt, feeling awkward and grateful and terrified all at once. The horse started moving, a walk, not a run, but steady, purposeful. The desert swallowed them whole. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Olivia watched the landscape roll past, endless variations on empty, and tried not to think about how completely she'd ruined everything. The job that didn't exist, the money she'd wasted, the home she couldn't go back to even if she wanted to, because there was nothing left there except people who'd made it clear she was a disappointment. "Those men," she said finally. "They called you Calloway. That's my name. And they were afraid of you. Some people are smart. Are you—" She hesitated. "Are you an outlaw?" That surprised a sound out of him. Not quite a laugh, but close. "No, I run cattle, own land, pay my taxes when someone bothers to collect them." "Then why—" "Because I don't let people like that think they run things." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You let one group push you around, next thing you know there's 10 more lined up to try. Olivia thought about that, about the logic of it, the harsh, practical math of a world she was only starting to understand. "The one they called Jimmy," she said. "He's important?" "He thinks he is." Calloway shifted his weight, adjusting their balance on the horse. "Runs a crew out of the canyon country. Smuggling, robbery, whatever pays. Territorial marshal can't touch him because he moves around too much. And he knows where you live." "He does." "So he'll come for you. Maybe. Maybe not." He didn't sound particularly concerned. Jimmy's smart enough to know the difference between easy money and expensive trouble. Usually. The word usually hung there like a storm cloud. They rode on. The sun climbed higher, turning the air into something solid and heavy. Olivia's throat went dry. Her hands ached. The rhythm of the horse became hypnotic, lulling her into a state somewhere between awake and asleep, where nothing felt quite real. When buildings finally appeared on the horizon, she thought she was imagining them. "That's the ranch," Calloway said. It sprawled across the valley floor like something that had grown there naturally. A main house, barn, several outbuildings, corrals, all connected by hard-packed dirt paths. Nothing fancy, nothing painted, just functional structures built to last, surrounded by miles of fence line that marched off in every direction. As they got closer, Olivia could see people moving between the buildings. Ranch hands, she guessed, though from a distance they were just shapes. A few stopped to watch their approach, hands shading their eyes against the glare. Calloway brought the horse to a stop near the main house. He dismounted first, then helped her down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground. "Maria!" he called toward the house. A woman appeared in the doorway, older, maybe 60, with steel gray hair pulled back tight and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed either time. She took one look at Olivia and crossed her arms. "What'd you bring home now?" she asked. "Found her in the valley. Those canyon runners had her cornered." Maria's expression shifted, sharpening. "She hurt?" "Scraped up. Scared. Probably dehydrated." "I'm fine," Olivia said, which was such an obvious lie that neither of them bothered responding. Maria descended the steps and circled Olivia once, assessing. "Get her inside. I'll fetch water and bandages." "I don't want to impose," Olivia started, but Maria cut her off with a look. "Girl, you're already imposing. Might as well do it properly." She turned to Calloway. "The Miller boy came by this morning. Says 3 head went missing from the north pasture." "Rustlers or coyotes?" "Didn't see bodies, so probably rustlers." Calloway's jaw tightened. "I'll ride out after I get her settled." "You'll eat first," Maria said, in a tone that didn't invite debate. "Can't track on an empty stomach." She disappeared back into the house. Calloway gestured for Olivia to follow, which she did, stepping into the relative cool of the interior. The house was bigger than it looked from outside. A large main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area, hallways leading to what she assumed were bedrooms. Everything was clean but worn, functional rather than decorative. "Sit," Calloway said, pointing to a chair at the long wooden table. Olivia sat. Her hands had started shaking again, now that there was nothing immediate to focus on. Delayed reaction, maybe. Or just the reality of the situation catching up. "You said you were heading to Redstone," Calloway said, leaning against the far wall. "What's in Redstone?" "A teaching position, supposedly." She heard the bitterness in her own voice. "I had a letter, but after what happened in Harrison Creek, I don't know if it's real." "What happened in Harrison Creek?" "The school didn't exist. The whole thing was a fraud." She swallowed hard. "The land agent took my money and disappeared." "How much money?" "Everything I had. $73. He didn't react, but something in his stillness suggested he understood exactly how catastrophic that was. Maria returned with a basin of water, clean cloths, and a tin that smelled like pine and something medicinal. She set everything on the table and reached for Olivia's hands without asking permission. "This'll sting," she warned, then proved herself right. Olivia bit her lip as Maria cleaned the scrapes, her touch efficient but not gentle. The older woman worked in silence, bandaging each palm with practiced precision. "You got people?" Maria asked, not looking up. "No, not anymore." "Family?" "A stepmother in Philadelphia. We don't speak." "Why not?" It was a blunt question, the kind polite society would never ask. Olivia found herself answering anyway, because she made it clear I was only tolerated as long as I was useful. When my father died and the money went to her, I stopped being useful. Maria grunted, finishing the last bandage. "So you came west." "Seemed like a good idea at the time." "How's that working out?" Despite everything, or maybe because of it, Olivia laughed. It came out harsh and slightly unhinged. "Not well." "At least you're honest." Maria collected the supplies. "Stay here. I'll get food." She left. Calloway remained by the wall, watching Olivia with that same measuring look. "The teaching job in Redstone," he said. "You confirm it's real?" "I wrote twice, got one letter back saying they'd hired someone already, another saying they were still looking. I don't know which is true." Probably neither. The words landed like stones. Olivia felt something crack inside her chest, the last brittle piece of hope she'd been carrying. "So that's it," she said quietly. "I came all this way for nothing." "Not nothing. You're alive." "Barely." "Still counts." Maria returned with bread, cheese, and dried meat arranged on a plate. She set it in front of Olivia, then poured water from a pitcher into a cup. "Eat," she ordered. "You look like you haven't had a proper meal in a week." It had been longer than that, but Olivia didn't admit it. She picked up the bread, forced herself to take a bite. It tasted like sawdust, though she knew that was her own fault, not the bread's. "She can stay in the guest room," Maria said to Calloway. "For tonight, anyway." "What about longer?" "That depends." Maria turned her sharp gaze on Olivia. "You know how to work?" Yes, I can work. I taught before back east, and I kept books for my father's business. Can you cook?" "Some. Basic things." "Can you clean?" "Yes." "Can you handle being around men who haven't seen a woman in months and might get stupid about it?" Olivia blinked. "I suppose I'd have to." Maria looked at Calloway. "She's got spine. Might be enough." "For what?" Olivia asked. "I need help," Calloway said. He pushed off from the wall, moved to the table, and sat across from her. "Maria manages the house, but she's one person. The hands are good at cattle, not so good at keeping things organized. Books are a mess, supplies get ordered wrong. Last month we ran out of flour because nobody thought to check inventory." "You want me to keep books?" "Books, supplies, correspondence, whatever needs organizing." He paused. "It's not teaching, and it's not glamorous, but it's work, if you want it." Olivia stared at him, at this stranger who'd saved her life and was now offering her exactly what she needed most, a reason to stay. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why help me? You don't know me. You could be a lot of things," he agreed. "But you're not a liar. Or a thief. I've met plenty of both, and they don't look like you do right now." "How do I look?" "Scared, desperate, honest about both." The words hit harder than they should have. Olivia looked down at her bandaged hands, blinking against the sudden sting in her eyes. "I can't pay you," she said. "Not for a while." "Room and board, plus a wage, same as the hands get." He stood, apparently considering the matter settled. "You start tomorrow. Maria will show you around." He headed for the door. Olivia found her voice before he reached it. "Mr. Calloway?" He stopped, turned. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I'll work hard, I promise." Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "Just don't shoot any of my men. Bullets are expensive." Then he was gone, leaving Olivia alone with Maria and a plate of food and a future she hadn't expected to have. Maria settled into the chair Calloway had vacated. "You'll sleep upstairs, end of the hall, door locks from the inside. Use it." "Are the men... should I be worried?" "They're cowboys, not saints, but Rhett doesn't tolerate disrespect under his roof, and they know it." She picked up a piece of cheese, examined it, put it back down. "Still, better to be careful." "Who is he?" "Really?" "What do you mean?" "Those men in the valley. They were afraid of him, and he talks about owning this place like it's substantial." "It is substantial. 3,000 acres, 200 head of cattle, contracts with buyers in Denver and Santa Fe." Maria's expression softened, just slightly. "Rhett built this from nothing. His father had land but no sense. Drank himself to death and left the boy with debts and broken fences. Rhett was 17. Most folks figured he'd lose it all inside a year. But he didn't. No. He worked, fought, made enemies and some allies. 10 years later, he's one of the biggest operations in 3 territories." She stood, gathering the empty basin. "He's hard, but he's fair. You do your job, you'll be fine." Olivia nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed it. That night, alone in the small upstairs room with its narrow bed and single window, she lay awake listening to unfamiliar sounds. Somewhere outside, cattle lowed. A horse whinnied. Men's voices drifted up from the bunkhouse, too distant to make out words. She thought about the canyon runners, about Jimmy, whoever he was, and whether he'd really let this go. She thought about Rhett Calloway, riding into danger without hesitation because it was the right thing to do. And she thought about herself, about the woman who'd left Philadelphia with such certainty that the West would be her salvation. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone naive and soft, unprepared for the reality of this place. But Olivia Hale was still alive, still here. That had to count for something. She touched the bandages on her palms, feeling the ache beneath. Tomorrow, she'd start earning her place. She'd prove she could be useful. She'd learn this world's rules and how to survive them. Tonight, though, she'd just let herself breathe. Through the window, stars burned cold and indifferent across an endless sky. The desert didn't care if she was ready, but maybe, just maybe, she was learning how not to care back. Morning arrived with the smell of coffee and wood smoke, dragging Olivia from a sleep she hadn't expected to find. For a moment, disoriented in the unfamiliar room, she thought she was back in Philadelphia, that the past weeks had been nothing more than a fever dream. Then her palms throbbed beneath their bandages, and reality reasserted itself with the subtlety of a slap. She dressed in the same ruined traveling dress, her only dress now, and tried to do something with her hair that didn't scream disaster. The mirror above the washstand showed her a stranger, face thinner than she remembered, eyes shadowed, a bruise blooming along her jawline that she didn't recall getting. She looked like exactly what she was, someone who'd barely survived. Downstairs, Maria was already moving through the kitchen with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. She glanced up when Olivia appeared, taking in her appearance with one sweep of those sharp eyes. "That dress won't last another day," she said. "I'll find you something that'll hold up better." "I can't take—" "You can, and you will. Can't have you falling apart every time you bend over." Maria gestured toward the table. "Sit. Eat. The men already cleared out an hour ago." Olivia sat, accepting the plate of eggs and biscuits Maria set in front of her. "What time is it?" 6:30. "That's late?" "For a ranch. That's sleeping in." Maria poured coffee into a tin cup, set it down with enough force to make the liquid slosh. "You'll get used to it, or you won't, and you'll leave. Either way, no point complaining about the hours." The coffee was strong enough to strip paint. Olivia drank it anyway, feeling it burn down her throat and settle in her stomach like liquid determination. "Where's Mr. Calloway?" "Out checking the fence line. Won't be back till noon, maybe later." Maria settled into the chair across from her with her own cup. "Which gives us time to go over what you're actually here to do." "Bookkeeping," Olivia said. "Supplies, correspondence." "That's the polite version." Maria's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Real version is you're here to clean up a mess that's been building for 3 years. Rhett's good at running cattle, bad at running paperwork. His last attempt at organization involved shoving everything into a trunk and pretending it didn't exist." "How bad is it?" "See for yourself." Maria led her down a hallway off the main room, past what looked like Calloway's bedroom, door closed, thankfully, and into a smaller room that might have been an office if offices could experience natural disasters. Papers covered every surface. Ledgers lay open and abandoned, their pages curled with age. A stack of unopened letters teetered on the corner of the desk, threatening collapse. "Sweet mercy," Olivia breathed. "That's one way to put it." Maria picked up a random sheet, squinted at it, put it back down. "Last person who tried to sort this gave up after 2 days, said it wasn't worth the headache." "What happened to them?" "Took the stage back to civilization and never looked back." Maria fixed Olivia with a look. "You planning to do the same?" Olivia stepped into the room, surveying the chaos with the eye of someone who'd once managed her father's entire accounting system. It was bad. Worse than bad. But it wasn't impossible. "I'll need boxes," she said. "At least 6, and string for bundling, and a new ledger. Those ones are too damaged to salvage." Something shifted in Maria's expression. "You sure about this?" "No, but I'm good at organizing chaos. It's possibly the only thing I'm actually qualified to do out here." Maria almost smiled. "I'll get you those boxes." The next 4 hours disappeared into a haze of paper and dust. Olivia started by sorting everything into piles: correspondence, invoices, receipts, contracts, miscellaneous papers that defied categorization. Some of it dated back 5 years. Some of it was recent enough that the ink hadn't fully dried. By the time Maria returned with lunch, Olivia had filled 3 boxes and developed a splitting headache. "Find anything interesting?" Maria asked, setting down a sandwich and more coffee. "Your supplier in Denver has been overcharging for grain, by a lot." Olivia held up an invoice. "This should be $12 a hundredweight. They're charging $18." Maria's eyebrows rose. "You sure?" "I checked 3 different months. Same pattern." She shuffled through more papers. "And your contract with the buyer in Santa Fe expired last October. You're operating without terms." "Rhett know about that?" "If he does, he hasn't renegotiated." Olivia rubbed her eyes, feeling grit under her lids. "There's more, but I need to organize it properly before I can give you a full accounting." "Take your time. This mess has been here for years. Another few days won't kill us." But Olivia couldn't take her time. Some restless energy had seized her, the kind that came from finally having something useful to do, something she could control. She worked through lunch, barely tasting the food, and was still at it when the light started changing toward evening. She didn't hear Calloway return. Didn't know he was there until his voice came from the doorway, startling her so badly she dropped an entire stack of sorted invoices. "You've been at this all day?" She spun around, hand pressed to her chest. He stood leaning against the doorframe, hat in hand, dust coating his clothes and boots. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from physical labor under a relentless sun. Yes, Maria showed me where everything was." His gaze moved past her to the boxes, the sorted piles, the cleared desk space. "You did all this? It's not finished. There's still—" She gestured vaguely at the remaining chaos. "A lot. There's a lot left." He stepped into the room, picked up one of the bundled stacks she'd labeled Contracts Current, flipped through it with the air of someone who'd been avoiding this exact task for months. "The grain supplier in Denver," Olivia said, unable to stop herself. "They're overcharging, and your Santa Fe contract needs renegotiation. And I'm not certain, but I think someone's been skimming from the household accounts." That got his attention. "How much?" "Small amounts, $5 here, 10 there, but it's consistent every month for the past year." Calloway's jaw tightened. He set down the contracts, crossed to the desk, and pulled out a ledger she hadn't gotten to yet. Flipped to a page near the middle, ran his finger down a column of numbers. Who had access to this? I don't know. Whoever was keeping the books before. That'd be Tucker, one of the hands. He closed the ledger with enough force to make dust rise. He left 3 months back, said he was heading to California. Did he leave in a hurry? Now that you mention it, yeah. Calloway's expression went flat and dangerous. Yeah, he did. An uncomfortable silence settled. Olivia became acutely aware that she'd just told her employer, the man who'd saved her life, that he'd been robbed by someone he'd trusted. That probably wasn't the best second impression. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have. It's not my place to. It's exactly your place. That's why you're here. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture that seemed unconscious. How much did Tucker take, total? I'd have to add it up properly, but maybe $150. Maybe more. Hell. He said it quietly, without heat, but she could see the anger simmering underneath, not at her, at the situation, at being played for a fool. Maria appeared in the doorway. Dinner's ready, and before you say you're not hungry, she added, looking at Olivia, you're eating anyway. I didn't make enough food to waste it on stubbornness. The dining table sat 8, but only 3 of them ate there that night. The ranch hands, Maria explained, took their meals in the bunkhouse. It was easier that way, less complicated. Complicated how? Olivia asked. You'll see, Maria said, which wasn't reassuring. Calloway ate in silence, working through his food with the mechanical efficiency of someone fueling up for more work. Olivia picked at hers, suddenly self-conscious about her table manners, her posture, everything. In Philadelphia, she'd been adequate at society dinners. Out here, she didn't know what the rules were. Tomorrow, Calloway said, breaking the quiet, I'll introduce you to the men. Set some ground rules. What kind of rules? The kind that keep everybody comfortable. He took a drink of water. Some of them won't like having a woman around. They'll be respectful about it, or they'll find work elsewhere. I don't want to cause problems. You're not causing anything. They're grown men. They can handle themselves. He stood, carried his plate to the kitchen. Get some rest. Tomorrow's longer than today. He left. Maria watched him go, then turned that assessing gaze on Olivia. You did good today, she said. I just sorted papers. You found a thief. That's more than good. Maria collected the remaining dishes. Rhett doesn't trust easy. His father taught him that people will take advantage if you let them. Tucker proved him right. But he trusted me, enough to leave me alone with all his records. That's different. How? Maria paused, considering her words. You got nothing to gain from stealing. You're already desperate enough that you'd take an honest wage for honest work. Tucker had options. You don't. It should have stung, being seen so clearly. Instead, Olivia just felt tired. No, she agreed. I really don't. That night, sleep came easier. Her body, exhausted from hours of sitting and sorting, gave up its protest and let her drift. But her dreams were restless, full of papers that multiplied no matter how many she organized, and shadows that moved just outside her vision. She woke to the sound of men's voices below her window. Not threatening, just present. A reminder that she was living in a house full of strangers, in a place that didn't feel safe yet. Maybe never would. The next 3 days blurred together in a routine that felt both foreign and strangely steadying. Wake before dawn. Dress in the borrowed clothes Maria had found. Pants and a work shirt that had belonged to someone smaller than the current hands, hemmed and taken in to almost fit. Eat. Work in the office until her eyes burned and her hand cramped from writing. Break for meals. Work more. Sleep. The papers slowly surrendered their secrets. She discovered that Calloway owned more land than she'd thought. 4,000 acres, not 3,000, because he'd bought an adjacent property 2 years ago and never properly recorded it. She found contracts that were still good, and ones that had expired into legal limbo. She uncovered a surprising amount of correspondence from buyers who wanted to do business, if only someone would write them back. On the 4th day, Calloway knocked on the office door frame around mid-morning. The men are taking a break, he said. Come meet them. Olivia's stomach dropped. Now? Better to get it done. She followed him outside, where a group of 6 men sat in the shade of the barn, passing around a water jug. They looked up as she approached, conversation dying mid-sentence. They were younger than she'd expected. 3 of them couldn't have been past 25. The oldest was maybe 40, weathered and lean, with the kind of face that had seen too much sun and not enough softness. They all had that same quality, hard-used but functional, like tools that had been maintained just well enough to keep working. "This is Miss Hale," Calloway said. No preamble, no softening. "She's managing the office. You need supplies, talk to her. You have questions about pay or scheduling, talk to her. You treat her the same way you'd treat me, which means respectful and professional. We clear?" A few nods. One of the younger ones, sandy-haired, with a crooked nose that suggested it had been broken at least once, raised his hand like a schoolboy. "Yeah, Carter? No disrespect intended, boss, but why do we need an office manager? Things been running fine without one." "You think losing $150 to Tucker is running fine?" That landed. A few of the men shifted uncomfortably. "Miss Hale found the discrepancy in 2 days," Calloway continued. "She's already saved us more than her wages will cost. Anyone got a problem with that?" Silence. But not the comfortable kind. The older man spoke up, voice rough as gravel. "The boys are just surprised is all. Ain't used to working around a lady." "Then get used to it, Hayes." Calloway's tone didn't invite argument. "She's here, she's staying, and the first person who makes her uncomfortable answers to me." "Understood, boss." Calloway turned to Olivia. "Anything you want to say?" She hadn't planned on speaking, hadn't prepared anything, but 6 pairs of eyes were on her now, measuring, judging, waiting to see if she'd crumble under the attention. "I'm not here to make your lives harder," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm here to make the operation run smoother. If you need something, tell me. If I'm doing something that interferes with your work, tell me that too. I'm new to this. I'll make mistakes, but I'm trying." Hayes studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Fair enough, miss." The sandy-haired one, Carter, offered a tentative smile. "Welcome to the madhouse." "Thank you," Olivia said, though she wasn't sure if it was a welcome or a warning. Calloway dismissed them back to work. As they dispersed, Olivia caught fragments of conversation, not hostile, but not exactly warm either. She was an unknown variable in a system that functioned on routine and familiarity. Of course they were wary. "They'll settle," Calloway said, reading her expression. "And if they don't, then they'll leave, and I'll hire people who can." He started walking back toward the house, and she fell into step beside him. "This isn't charity, Miss Hale. You're good at what you do. That makes you valuable. Don't apologize for it." The words settled somewhere in her chest, warm and unexpected. "I found something else in the papers," she said. "A letter from a lawyer in Denver, about water rights." His stride faltered, just slightly. "What about them?" "He says there's a dispute. Someone's claiming you don't have legal access to the creek that runs through your northern property." "That's been going on for 2 years. It's nothing." The letter's dated 3 weeks ago. He says if you don't respond by the end of the month, they'll file with the territorial court. Calloway stopped walking. "Let me see it." They went back to the office. Olivia pulled the letter from the stack marked Legal Urgent and handed it over. He read it once, then again, his expression darkening with each line. "Miller," he said finally. "It's got to be. He's been trying to buy that northern section since my father died." "Who's Miller?" "Owns the property adjacent to mine. We share a boundary line and a water source. If he can prove I don't have rights to the creek, my cattle can't access it. I'd have to sell or watch them die of thirst." "Can he prove it?" "Not if the original deed's in order, but I don't know where the hell that deed is." He rubbed his face, suddenly looking older. "My father kept everything in a safe deposit box in town. When he died, the bank said it had been emptied. I assumed he'd gambled it all away along with everything else." "What if he didn't? What if the papers are just lost? Then I'm fighting a legal battle with no ammunition." Olivia chewed her lip, thinking. "The bank would have records of when the box was accessed, who had the key. If someone emptied it after your father died, that's theft. Bank's not going to hand over records just because I ask nicely. No, but a lawyer might be able to get them, especially if there's a court case brewing." He looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "You know a lot about legal process for a school teacher. My father had business disputes. I watched him handle them." She shrugged. mostly by throwing money at lawyers until the problem went away, but the principle's the same. I don't have money to throw. Then write to this lawyer in Denver. Tell him what you know. See if he'll take the case on contingency. She could see him considering it, weighing options. At minimum, you need to respond before the deadline. Silence looks like admission. Hell. He folded the letter, tucked it into his pocket. All right. Draft a response. I'll sign it. What do you want it to say? That I dispute the claim. That I have documentation proving ownership. He paused. Even if I don't actually have it yet. That's lying. That's buying time. He met her eyes. You have a problem with that? Olivia thought about Philadelphia, about the stepmother who'd lied to her father's face about caring for his daughter, about the land agent who'd invented an entire school to steal her money, about a world that rewarded dishonesty and punished the honest. No, she said, I don't have a problem with it. The corner of his mouth twitched. Good. Over the next week, the ranch began to feel less like foreign territory and more like a place where she existed, if not quite belonged. She learned the rhythms of it, the early mornings, the long afternoons, the way the men moved through their work with the ease of practice. She learned names. Hayes, the oldest hand, who'd worked for Calloway's father and stayed on out of loyalty or stubbornness or both. Carter, who was quick to smile and slow to think. Rodriguez, quiet and competent, who could rope a steer faster than anyone she'd ever seen. The Miller boy, actually 19, named James, who did odd jobs and errands in exchange for meals and a place to sleep in the hayloft. She learned that Maria had worked for the Calloway family for 30 years, that she'd raised Rhett after his mother died in childbirth, that she was the closest thing to family he had left. And she learned that the town, Grafton, 8 miles southeast, had opinions about her presence on the ranch. Maria mentioned it casually one morning while kneading bread dough. Betty Parsons came by yesterday while you were working, wanted to know if the rumors were true. What rumors? That Rhett's keeping a woman out here. Maria's hands never stopped moving, pushing and folding the dough with practiced rhythm. Told her you were managing the office. Don't think she believed me. Olivia's stomach sank. What did she say? Nothing to my face. But Betty Parsons doesn't need to say things directly. She'll spread it around town that Rhett Calloway's living in sin with some desperate girl from back east, and by Sunday the whole county will know. But we're not, well, I know that. You know that. Rhett knows that. Maria shaped the dough into a ball, set it in a bowl to rise. Doesn't matter what's true, matters what people want to believe. So what do I do? Nothing. Let them talk. They'll get bored eventually. Maria washed her hands, dried them on her apron. Or you could come to town with me next week. Let them see you're a real person, not some scandalous fantasy. The thought of facing a town full of suspicious strangers made Olivia want to hide in the office forever. But Maria was right. Hiding would only confirm whatever story they were telling themselves. All right, she said, I'll go. Bring that backbone you showed the hands. You'll need it. The trip to Grafton happened on a Wednesday, with Maria driving the wagon and Olivia sitting beside her, dressed in the least worn of her borrowed clothes. The town appeared on the horizon around midday, a collection of buildings that tried hard to look permanent and mostly succeeded. They went to the general store first. Maria needed supplies. Olivia needed to be seen. The proprietor, a thin man with spectacles and a nervous manner, brightened when they entered. Mrs. Maria, good to see you, and this must be... He faltered, clearly having heard something but not knowing how to address it. Miss Hale, Maria said firmly. She's managing Mr. Calloway's office. Office? Yes. Of course. He wiped his hands on his apron. What can I get for you ladies today? Maria rattled off a list while Olivia wandered the aisles, pretending to examine goods she couldn't afford. She could feel eyes on her, other customers, trying not to stare but staring anyway. A woman in a fine dress whispered something to her companion, and they both looked at Olivia with expressions that ranged from curiosity to disapproval. She kept her chin up and her expression neutral, the way her father had taught her. Never let them see you flinch. Outside, loading the supplies into the wagon, Maria said, You did well in there. I didn't do anything. Exactly. You didn't apologize, didn't explain yourself. That's how you handle people like Betty Parsons. Was she in there? Third aisle. blue dress, staring daggers. Olivia hadn't noticed, or maybe she had, and her mind had filed it away under threats to ignore. They made 2 more stops, the post office, where Olivia mailed the letter to the lawyer in Denver, and the mercantile, where Maria ordered fabric for new curtains. At each place, the pattern repeated: curious stares, whispered conversations, a careful politeness that barely masked judgment. By the time they headed back to the ranch, Olivia felt scraped raw. "Does it get easier?" she asked. Maria was quiet for a moment, guiding the horses along the rutted road. "The talk? No. But you get tougher. Start caring less what people think and more about whether you're doing right by yourself." "And am I doing right?" "You're working, earning your keep, not hurting anybody." Maria glanced at her. "That's more than most can say." That night, Olivia sat in the office long after dinner, going through another stack of correspondence by lamplight. She'd found a rhythm to the work, sorting, categorizing, responding to what needed responses, filing what didn't. It was soothing in its way, a problem she could actually solve. She was drafting a letter to a cattle buyer when Calloway appeared in the doorway, a bottle and 2 glasses in hand. "You're going to ruin your eyes working by lamplight," he said. "I'm almost finished." "You said that 2 hours ago. Maria mentioned it when she went to bed." He set the glasses on the desk, poured amber liquid into both. "Take a break." Olivia started to protest, then realized she'd been staring at the same paragraph for 10 minutes without processing it. She set down her pen, accepted the glass he offered. "What is this?" "Whiskey. Not the good kind, but it'll do." He settled into the chair across from her, the one she'd started thinking of as his, even though he rarely used it. "Maria said town was interesting." "That's a polite word for it." "They give you trouble?" "No, just looks. Whispers." She took a sip of the whiskey, felt it burn its way down. "I'm the scandal of the week, apparently." "Week, hell, you'll be the scandal of the month." He drank from his own glass, watching her over the rim. "Bothers you? Shouldn't it?" "Maybe, but you're not from here. Their opinions don't have to matter." "Easy for you to say. You belong here." "I own land here." "That's not the same as belonging." He leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. "My father wasn't well liked. Drunk, mean, owed money to half the county. When he died, people were waiting to see if I'd be the same. Took years to prove I wasn't. And now? Now they respect me because I'm useful. I employ people, buy goods, don't cause trouble." He shrugged. "It's not friendship, but it's enough." Olivia turned the glass in her hands, watching the liquid catch the lamplight. "Is that really enough? Just being useful?" "Depends on what you want." His gaze was steady, unreadable. "What do you want, Miss Hale?" The question caught her off guard, not because she didn't know the answer, but because no one had asked her in so long. "I want to not be afraid," she said finally. "I want to wake up without wondering if today's the day everything falls apart again. I want—" She stopped, feeling suddenly exposed. "What?" "I want to matter. Not because I'm convenient or because I'm filling a role. I want to matter because I'm good at something that needs doing." He didn't respond immediately, just sat there, studying her with that same measuring look that had unnerved her the first day. "You're good at this," he said finally, gesturing to the organized office around them. "Better than anyone I've hired. If that's not mattering, I don't know what is." The words shouldn't have hit as hard as they did. Olivia blinked against the sudden pressure behind her eyes, taking another drink to cover the reaction. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me, it's just fact." He stood, leaving his glass on the desk. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow I need you to inventory the tack room. Hayes thinks we're short on bridles, but can't remember how many we're supposed to have." "I'll handle it." He paused in the doorway, looking back. "And Miss Hale? About the town. Let them talk. You keep doing what you're doing, and eventually they'll find someone else to gossip about." After he left, Olivia sat alone in the quiet office, finishing her whiskey and thinking about usefulness and belonging and the difference between the two. The next morning brought trouble in the form of a rider approaching the ranch at speed. Olivia was in the tack room counting bridles. Hayes had been right, they were short 3, when she heard the commotion outside. By the time she emerged, Calloway was already in the yard, along with Hayes and Rodriguez. The rider was young, maybe 16, his horse lathered and blowing hard. Mr. Calloway, the boy gasped. My pa sent me. Said to warn you, Jimmy's crew hit the McAllister place last night. Took 20 head and burned the barn. Calloway's expression went flat. Anyone hurt? McAllister's boy tried to stop them. They beat him pretty bad. Doc says he'll live, but... The boy swallowed hard. Pa thinks they're moving this way. Wanted you to know. Your pa's got good sense. Tell him I'm grateful. Calloway looked at Hayes. Double the watch tonight. 2 men, armed, rotating every 4 hours. No one works alone. Yes, boss. The boy wheeled his horse and took off the way he'd come. Olivia stood frozen, the count sheet still in her hand, her mind racing through implications. Jimmy. The name from that first day when Calloway had driven off her attackers. Calloway noticed her standing there. Inside, he said. Not harsh, but firm. Now. She followed him into the house, where Maria was already pulling rifles down from the rack above the fireplace. How many? She asked Calloway. Don't know. But if they hit McAllister's, they're bold enough to try here. He checked the rifle Maria handed him, his movements efficient and practiced. Miss Hale, you remember how to shoot? Barely. I told you. I'm not... Doesn't matter. You're learning. He pulled another rifle from the rack, smaller than the others. This one's lighter. Come on. They went out behind the barn to a stretch of empty ground backed by a hillside. Calloway set up a row of bottles on a fence rail, then showed her how to hold the rifle, how to sight down the barrel, how to breathe and squeeze rather than pull. You're going to miss, he said. A lot. That's fine. I just need you comfortable enough that you won't freeze if something happens. Is something going to happen? Maybe, maybe not. He stepped back. Try it. She raised the rifle, feeling the weight of it against her shoulder. Sighted on the leftmost bottle. Squeezed the trigger. The recoil knocked her back a step, and the shot went wide by at least 3 feet. Again, Calloway said. She tried 5 more times, missed every shot. Her shoulder was going to bruise, and her ears were ringing despite Calloway's warning to expect the noise. One more, he said. Focus on the bottle. Nothing else exists. She tried to find that focus, tried to quiet the fear thrumming through her veins, breathed out slowly and squeezed. The bottle exploded in a spray of glass. There, Calloway said, and she could hear the approval in his voice. You can do it when you need to. I got lucky. Luck's just another word for being ready when the moment comes. He took the rifle back, started walking toward the house. I want you to stay inside tonight. Door locked. If anyone comes to the house who isn't me or one of the hands you know, you shoot first and ask questions after. Rhett. She used his first name without thinking, and he stopped, turned to look at her. What if they don't come? What if this is just fear? Then we wasted a night's sleep for nothing. I can live with that. His expression softened, just slightly. I'd rather be wrong and prepared than right and dead. She couldn't argue with that logic. That night, Olivia sat in her room with the small rifle across her lap and the lamp turned low. From the window, she could see the barn and part of the yard, where lanterns marked the positions of the men on watch. Everything looked quiet, peaceful even, but she couldn't shake the tension coiled in her chest, the certainty that something was coming. Hours passed. Midnight. 1 in the morning. Her eyelids grew heavy despite her best efforts. She must have dozed because she woke to the sound of hoofbeats, multiple horses, moving fast. She was at the window instantly, heart hammering, rifle in hand. Dark shapes moved in the yard. Too many to count. She heard shouting, saw the flash of gunfire, heard the sharp crack of it echoing across the valley. Then Calloway's voice, loud and commanding, "Get clear of the barn! They're going to fire it!" Olivia didn't think. She just moved, running downstairs and out the front door despite every instruction to stay inside. She could see flames now, licking up the side of the barn where someone had thrown a torch. "Water!" Hayes was yelling. "Form a line!" Men scrambled to grab buckets, but the fire was spreading fast. Olivia ran to the well, started hauling up water, passing buckets to whoever reached for them. Smoke choked the air, making her eyes stream. Someone grabbed her arm, Carter, his face black with soot. "Miss Hale, you need to get back inside." "I can help." A gunshot cracked past close enough that she felt the air move. Carter shoved her behind the water trough, covering her with his body as more shots rang out. "Stay down," he ordered. Through the chaos, she could hear Calloway's voice, directing the men, keeping them organized despite the fire and the gunfire and the panic that wanted to take over. She couldn't see him, but she could track him by sound, steady and unflinching. The attack lasted maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. Time distorted when fear took over. By the time the riders disappeared into the darkness and the immediate danger passed, half the barn was burning and 3 of the hands were bleeding from minor wounds. Olivia stood on shaking legs, looking at the destruction, feeling useless and furious and terrified all at once. Calloway appeared through the smoke, his shirt torn and blood running down his arm. He saw her and his expression shifted from tactical to something harder to read. "I told you to stay inside," he said. "The barn was on fire. And you could have been shot." "So could you," she gestured at his arm. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing." "Let me see it." "Miss Hale, let me see it, or I'll tell Maria you're being stubborn about injuries again." That surprised something that might have been a laugh out of him. He held out his arm. The wound was shallow, more graze than gouge, but it needed cleaning. "Inside," she ordered, sounding more confident than she felt. "Maria will have bandages." He followed her into the house where Maria was indeed already setting out medical supplies with the calm efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Too many times before. "Sit," Maria told Calloway, pointing to a chair. He sat. Olivia cleaned the wound while Maria tended to the other injured men. Her hands shook, but she forced them steady, dabbing away blood and dirt, wrapping clean cloth around his bicep. "You did good tonight," Calloway said quietly. "I disobeyed orders and nearly got shot. But you didn't freeze. That's what matters." Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. She'd proven she wouldn't run, wouldn't hide, even when hiding was the smart choice. "We lost part of the barn," he said, "but we saved the horses and most of the tack. That's a win in my book. Will they come back?" "Maybe. Probably not tonight." He flexed his arm, testing the bandage. "But we're doubling security until I can track down Jimmy and end this." "End it how?" His smile was grim. "However it needs to end." Dawn came gray and tired, revealing the full extent of the damage. The barn was salvageable, but it would take weeks to repair. They'd lost supplies, lost time, lost the illusion that they were safe out here. But they hadn't lost anyone. And that, Olivia was learning, was the only victory that really mattered in this harsh, unforgiving place. She stood in the yard, watching the sun rise over the valley, and realized something had shifted inside her. She wasn't the same woman who'd arrived desperate and broken. She was becoming something else, something harder, something that might actually survive. The burned barn stood like a warning for 3 days before Calloway made his decision. Olivia watched him from the office window that third morning, standing alone in the yard with his arms crossed, staring at the blackened timbers. He'd been doing that a lot, going quiet, retreating into whatever calculations ran through his head. The hands gave him space. Maria gave him space. Even Olivia had learned to recognize when pushing would only make things worse. But space wasn't fixing the problem. Jimmy's crew was still out there, and everyone knew it was only a matter of time before they came back to finish what they'd started. "He's going after them," Maria said from the doorway, startling Olivia badly enough that she dropped the pen she'd been holding. "How do you know?" "Because I raised him. I know that look." Maria came into the room, set down a cup of coffee Olivia hadn't asked for but needed anyway. "He'll ride out tomorrow, maybe the day after. Take Hayes and Rodriguez, try to track them to wherever they're holed up. That's suicide. There's at least a dozen men in Jimmy's crew. Probably more." Maria's voice was flat, resigned. "But Rhett won't sit here waiting for them to burn us out. It's not in him." Olivia's chest tightened. Can't he get help? The territorial marshal, or Marshall's 3 weeks away and doesn't care about ranch disputes. Far as the law's concerned, this is our problem to solve. Maria picked up one of the ledgers Olivia had been working through, flipped it open without really looking at it. "You want to help him? You'll make sure this place keeps running while he's gone. Can you do that?" "I don't know how to run a ranch." Neither did he when he started. "You'll figure it out." It wasn't reassurance. It was expectation. The kind that didn't leave room for failure. That afternoon, Olivia found Calloway in the stable, checking his horse's shoes with the kind of methodical attention that suggested he was avoiding conversation. She stood in the doorway for a moment, gathering courage she wasn't sure she had. "Maria says you're leaving," she said, his hand stilled on the hoof he'd been examining. "Maria talks too much. She's worried about you." "She's always worried." He set the horse's foot down, straightened to face her. "I'll be back in a week. Maybe less." "And if you're not?" "Then Hayes knows how to run things. Listen to him." He moved to the next hoof, resuming his inspection like the conversation was over. Olivia stepped into the stable, close enough that he couldn't pretend she wasn't there. "This is a mistake." That got his attention. He looked up, expression unreadable. "Excuse me?" "Going after them with 3 men. It's a mistake. You'll get killed, and then what? Jimmy burns this place to the ground, and everyone here loses everything. You got a better idea?" "Yes. Wait. Let them come to you. You know this land better than they do. You have defensible positions. Make them fight on your terms, not theirs." "And how long do I wait? A week? A month? While they pick off my cattle and terrorize my hands?" He shook his head. "I won't live like that. Under siege, in my own home." "So you'd rather die making a point?" The words came out harsher than she'd intended. Calloway's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he might actually get angry. Instead, he just looked tired. "I'd rather handle my own problems instead of hoping they go away," he said quietly. "That's what men like Jimmy count on. Good people being too scared to fight back." "I'm not saying don't fight. I'm saying don't throw your life away on a fight you can't win." "Who says I can't win?" "Mathematics. 12 against 3 is bad odds no matter how skilled you are." He almost smiled at that. Almost. "You always this argumentative with your employers?" "Only when they're being stupid." That did surprise a laugh out of him, short and rough, but genuine. "Fair enough." He went back to checking the horse, but his posture had shifted, less defensive. "I appreciate the concern, Miss Hale, but this isn't your problem to solve. It became my problem when they burned your barn while I was living under your roof. You didn't ask for that." "Neither did you. But here we are." She crossed her arms, mirroring his earlier stance in the yard. "At least take more men. Carter and young Miller. They can shoot." "They're boys." "So were you once. And from what Maria says, you were running this place at 17 with enemies on every side." She held his gaze. "Trust them the way someone must have trusted you." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. He studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he was seeing past whatever front she'd managed to construct. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" he asked. "No." "Stubborn." "I prefer persistent." That's what stubborn people always say. But there was no heat in it. He finished with the horse, gave its neck a pat, and turned to face her fully. "All right, 5 men instead of 3, but Hayes stays here. Someone needs to run things if this goes wrong." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Might still get us all killed." He walked past her, close enough that she caught the scent of leather and smoke and something else she couldn't name. At the door, he paused. "Olivia," he said, using her first name for the first time since she'd arrived. "If something happens, if we don't come back, there's a lockbox under my bed. Papers, money, deeds. Hayes knows about it. He'll make sure you and Maria are taken care of." Her throat tightened. "Nothing's going to happen." "Probably not, but I like being prepared." He tipped his hat, a gesture that felt oddly formal, and left her standing alone in the stable with her heart beating too fast and her hands shaking just enough to notice. They rode out at dawn 2 days later. Calloway, Rodriguez, Carter, young Miller, and a hand named Thompson who'd arrived last month and barely spoke but could track a snake across bare rock. Olivia watched from the porch as they disappeared over the ridge, 5 dark shapes against the pale sky. Maria stood beside her, silent and tense. "How long?" Olivia asked. "However long it takes." Maria turned back into the house. "Come on. Work doesn't stop just because the men are gone." She was right, of course. The cattle still needed tending. Fences still needed mending. The office still had a mountain of correspondence that wouldn't answer itself. Olivia threw herself into it, grateful for the distraction, trying not to count the hours or imagine what might be happening out there in the canyon country. Hayes ran the daily operations with quiet competence, directing the remaining hands through their tasks without fuss or drama. He checked in with Olivia twice a day, once in the morning to coordinate supplies, once in the evening to report on the day's work. It was efficient, professional, and it did absolutely nothing to ease the knot of worry in her chest. On the third day, a rider approached from town. Not one of theirs. Someone Olivia didn't recognize. Hayes met him in the yard, spoke briefly, then sent him on his way before coming to find Olivia in the office. "News from Grafton," he said. "Jimmy's crew hit a stage station yesterday. Killed 2 people, took everything that wasn't nailed down." Olivia's stomach dropped. "Where?" 20 miles north of here, near the Canyon Pass." Hayes rubbed his jaw, looking troubled. "That's close. Real close. Does that mean Rhett found them? Or they're moving this direction anyway? Hard to say." He studied her face. "You holding up all right, miss?" "I'm fine." "Respectfully, you look like you haven't slept in 3 days." She probably hadn't. Not properly. Just snatches of restless half-sleep interrupted by every sound and shadow. "I'll sleep when they get back. Might be a while yet." "Then I'll wait." Hayes nodded slowly. "You care about him, the boss." It wasn't a question, but Olivia felt her face heat anyway. "He gave me a job when I had nothing. Of course I care what happens to him." "That's not what I meant, and you know it." She did know it. Had known it for weeks, maybe, but had been carefully not thinking about it because thinking about it meant admitting something she wasn't ready to admit. That somewhere between organizing his chaotic office and learning to shoot and standing in the yard while the barn burned, she'd started seeing Rhett Calloway as more than just an employer, more than just the man who'd saved her. "It doesn't matter," she said finally, "what I feel or don't feel. He's out there risking his life, and I'm here doing paperwork. That's the reality." "Reality changes," Hayes said. "I've seen it happen." He headed for the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, miss, I think you're good for him. Haven't seen him laugh in years before you showed up." He left before she could figure out how to respond to that. The 4th day brought a thunderstorm that turned the valley into a sea of mud and made outdoor work nearly impossible. Olivia stood at the window, watching rain hammer the yard, wondering if Calloway and his men had shelter or if they were caught out in this mess. Maria found her there around midday. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor with all that pacing." "I'm not pacing. You've walked past this window 17 times in the last hour. That's pacing." Maria handed her a plate with bread and cheese. "Eat something. You're no good to anyone if you collapse." Olivia took the plate but didn't eat. What if something's happened? What if they're hurt and we're just sitting here? Then there's nothing we can do about it except wait. Maria's voice was firm but not unkind. "I know it's hard. I've done this more times than I can count. Watched him ride off into danger, wondering if he'd come back. But worrying yourself sick won't change anything. How do you stand it?" "Practice. And faith that he's smart enough to keep himself alive." Maria settled into a chair, fixing Olivia with that sharp gaze. "You love him yet, or are you still fighting it?" The directness of the question made Olivia's breath catch. That's not... We barely know each other." "You know him well enough. Seen him at his best and his worst. That's more than most people get before they make a decision." Maria's expression softened slightly. "And he looks at you like you're the first interesting thing that's happened to him in a decade. Don't think I haven't noticed." Even if that were true, which I'm not saying it is, it doesn't change the fact that he might not come back. All the more reason not to waste time lying to yourself about what you feel. Olivia opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because Maria was right, and they both knew it. She did care about Rhett. More than was probably smart. More than was certainly safe. And if something happened to him out there, she'd regret every moment she'd spent pretending otherwise. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted quietly. "Any of this. The ranch, the danger, She gestured vaguely. "Him. Nobody does at first. You just figure it out as you go." Maria stood, collected the untouched plate. "But you're tougher than you think, Olivia Hale. Wouldn't have made it this far if you weren't." The storm passed overnight, leaving the world washed clean and dripping. Olivia woke before dawn to the sound of hoofbeats in the yard, multiple horses, moving fast. Her heart seized with hope and fear in equal measure as she scrambled to the window. 3 riders. No, 4. She counted twice to be sure, her stomach sinking when she only reached 4 no matter how many times she tried. One missing. She was down the stairs and out the door before she'd fully processed the thought. Bare feet splashing through mud, nightgown soaked within seconds. Hayes was already there, helping someone down from a horse. Someone slumped and clearly hurt. Calloway. Relief and terror hit her simultaneously. He was alive. He was hurt. She couldn't tell how badly in the pre-dawn dimness, but the way Rodriguez and Carter were supporting him suggested it wasn't good. "Get him inside," Maria ordered from the porch, already moving into crisis mode. "Carter, fetch the medical kit. Rodriguez, start water boiling." They half-carried Calloway into the house and laid him on the long table, the same one where they ate meals, now pressed into service as a makeshift operating surface. In the lamplight, Olivia could see the damage. A gash across his temple, bruises blooming dark on his face and ribs, and his left side soaked with blood from a wound she couldn't quite see yet. "What happened?" Maria demanded, already cutting away his shirt to get to the injury. "Ambush," Rodriguez said, his voice tight. "We found their camp, but they knew we were coming. Had men positioned. We fought our way out, but where's Thompson?" The silence that followed told Olivia everything she needed to know. "Damn," Hayes breathed. Maria's hands never stopped moving, cleaning away blood to reveal a bullet wound in Calloway's side. It looked bad, worse than the graze on his arm had been. But he was conscious, gritting his teeth against the pain, very deliberately, not looking at any of them. "Bullet's still in there," Maria said. "I need to get it out. Olivia, I need you to help." "I don't know how to You're about to learn. Wash your hands, boil those instruments." She pointed to a collection of terrifyingly sharp tools. "And somebody get him something to bite down on. This is gonna hurt." The next hour was the longest of Olivia's life. She held Calloway's hand while Maria dug for the bullet, felt his grip tighten until she thought her bones might break, watched his face go white and then gray, and then finally, mercifully, unconscious when the pain became too much. Maria worked with the calm precision of someone who had done this before, extracting the bullet and stitching the wound closed with neat, efficient movements. When she finally stepped back, her hands were covered in blood and her expression was grim. "He'll live," she said. "If infection doesn't set in, next few days are critical." "What do we do?" Olivia asked. "Keep the wound clean, change the bandages twice a day, watch for fever." Maria wiped her hands on a rag that was already ruined. "And pray he's too stubborn to die." They moved him to his room, a space Olivia had never seen, spare and functional, with a bed that barely fit his frame. She helped Maria get him settled, then stood awkwardly in the doorway while the older woman arranged blankets. "You should sleep," Maria said without looking up. "You've been awake for 20 hours. Someone needs to watch him." "I'll watch him. That's my job." "Maria, go." This time she did look up, and her expression was softer than usual. "You can take over in a few hours. But you're no good to him exhausted." Olivia wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a physical weight. She retreated to her own room, fully intending to rest for an hour at most. She woke to late afternoon sun and the smell of cooking food. Her body felt heavy, disconnected, like she'd been underwater too long. She dressed quickly and went downstairs to find Carter and young Miller in the kitchen, looking lost. "Miss Hale," Carter said, relief obvious on his face. "Hayes said you'd know what to do about the cattle in the south pasture. They broke through the fence during the storm, and we can't—" "Slow down," Olivia interrupted, her mind still foggy. "Start from the beginning." He explained the situation. Storm damage, scattered cattle, fence repairs needed urgently. Problems that would normally go to Calloway, but Calloway was unconscious and Maria was occupied, and Hayes was already managing 3 other crises, which left her. "All right," she said, forcing her brain to work through the exhaustion. "How many heads scattered? Maybe 30? And the fence? How bad is the damage? 20 yards down? Maybe more." She thought through the implications. Scattered cattle meant predators might pick them off. Broken fence meant more could escape. Both needed immediate attention, but they only had so many hands. "Send Rodriguez and 2 others to round up the cattle," she decided. "You and Miller start on the fence. Use whatever materials we have in the supply shed. If you need more, come find me." Carter blinked. "You sure, miss?" "No, but we don't have better options right now." She managed something that might have been a smile. Go, before we lose more daylight." They went, leaving her alone in the kitchen with a growing awareness of just how far outside her depth she'd swum. She wasn't a rancher, didn't know cattle from cows. Well, no, that was the same thing, but the point stood. She was a bookkeeper playing at ranch management, and sooner or later someone was going to figure out she had no idea what she was doing. But not today. Today she just had to keep things from falling apart completely. She spent the afternoon fielding questions, making decisions based on half-understood information, and trying desperately to remember everything she'd learned by osmosis over the past weeks. Hayes helped when he could, translating her uncertain orders into actionable instructions the hands could follow. By evening, the cattle were mostly rounded up, the fence was temporarily patched, and she'd somehow avoided any catastrophic mistakes. She checked on Calloway before dinner. He was still unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. Maria sat in a chair beside the bed, reading by lamplight. "Any change?" Olivia asked quietly. "Not yet. But he's stable." Maria marked her place in the book. "How are things outside?" "Chaotic, but managed." Olivia leaned against the doorframe. "I don't know how he does this every day." "Practice. And he's been doing it since he was younger than you are now." Maria stood, stretched her back. "I need food. Can you sit with him for a bit?" "Of course." Maria left, and Olivia took her place in the chair. The room felt too quiet, too still. She studied Calloway's face in the lamplight, the hard lines of it softened by unconsciousness, the usual tension gone. He looked younger like this, more vulnerable. She reached out without thinking, brushed a strand of hair back from his forehead. His skin was warm but not feverish. That was good. Fever meant infection, and infection meant... No, she wasn't going to think about that. "You better wake up," she said quietly, not sure if he could hear her or if she was just talking to make herself feel less alone. "Because I'm doing a terrible job running your ranch, and the hands are starting to figure it out. And because..." She stopped, swallowed hard. "Because Maria's right. I do care about you, more than I should, more than is smart. And I'd really like the chance to tell you that when you're actually conscious to hear it." No response. She hadn't expected one. But saying it out loud felt important somehow, like making a promise to herself. She stayed there until Maria returned, then went to grab food and check in with Hayes one more time. The evening passed in a blur of small crises and minor decisions. A hand cut himself on fence wire. She bandaged it. The cattle in the north pasture were acting strange. She sent someone to investigate, and it turned out to be nothing. The supply of lamp oil was running low. She made a note to order more. Mundane problems, solvable problems, the kind that kept her mind occupied and her hands busy and her fear at bay. That night, she took the late watch with Calloway, sitting in the chair beside his bed with a book she wasn't reading. Around midnight, he stirred. A small movement, barely noticeable, but enough to make her heart leap. "Rhett?" She leaned forward. "Can you hear me? Can you?" His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually sharpening. He looked at her, blinked, seemed to be trying to remember where he was. "Olivia," he said, his voice rough and dry. Relief flooded through her so strongly she felt dizzy. "Don't talk. I'll get water." She helped him drink, supporting his head while he took small sips. When he'd had enough, she eased him back down, acutely aware of how close they were, how intimate this felt. "How bad?" he asked. "Bad enough. Maria got the bullet out. You've been unconscious for almost a day." He processed that, his expression tightening with something that might have been guilt. "Thompson? I'm sorry." He closed his eyes, jaw working. "Damn." "Rodriguez said it was an ambush, that they were waiting for you." Someone talked. Had to. He tried to shift position and immediately regretted it, pain flashing across his face. "How long before I can get back to work?" "Maria says at least a week. Probably 2 if you actually let yourself heal properly." "Don't have 2 weeks. Jimmy's still out there. And you're in here, barely able to move. Let it go for now." She adjusted his blanket, a gesture that felt more natural than it should have. "I'm managing things. Hayes is helping. We're keeping everything running." He looked at her, really looked, and she saw surprise there. "You're running the ranch?" "Badly, but yes." "And everything's still standing?" "So far." Something that might have been pride flickered in his expression. Told you you'd figure it out? I'm terrified every second that I'm making the wrong decision. Welcome to ranching. He tried to smile, managed something closer to a grimace. You staying here? In the chair? Someone needs to watch you. I'm fine. You were shot. You're not fine. She settled back into the chair, making it clear she wasn't leaving. Go back to sleep. I'll wake Maria if anything changes. Olivia. Sleep, Rhett. He studied her for another long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But tomorrow, you're going to tell me everything that's been happening. Don't leave anything out. Tomorrow, she agreed. He drifted off again, his breathing evening out into the rhythm of sleep. Olivia sat in the quiet darkness, listening to him breathe, feeling the tight knot of fear in her chest finally start to loosen. He was alive. Hurt, but alive. And she'd kept his ranch running in his absence, however imperfectly. That had to count for something. Through the window, the first hints of dawn were starting to lighten the sky. A new day. A chance to keep going, keep fighting, keep surviving in this harsh place that had somehow become home. She reached out, took his hand carefully, felt the calluses on his palm, the strength in his fingers even in sleep. And she made a silent promise that she'd be here when he woke, that she'd keep things together until he could take over again, that she wasn't going anywhere. Not now, not ever, if she could help it. The desert didn't care if you were ready, but maybe, just maybe, she was learning how to be ready anyway. Recovery was slower than Rhett wanted and faster than Maria expected. By the third day, he was sitting up and complaining about being bedridden. By the fifth, he was trying to walk to the office and making it halfway before his legs gave out. Olivia found him leaning against the wall in the hallway, sweating and pale, too proud to call for help. This is exactly what Maria said you'd do, she said, sliding under his arm to support his weight. She has a bet going with Hayes about how long you'd last before trying something stupid. How long did she guess? 4 days? So I beat her expectations. By 12 hours. Congratulations on your incredible restraint. She helped him back to bed, ignoring his muttered protests. You're going to tear your stitches, and then Maria will have my head for not watching you closely enough. He settled against the pillows with a grimace. I'm going insane in here. I need to see the books, check on the med. The books are fine. The cattle are fine. Hayes has everything under control. She poured water from the pitcher on his nightstand, handed him the cup. The only thing not fine is you, and you're not going to be fine if you don't rest. I've been resting for 5 days. You were unconscious for 2 of them. That doesn't count. He drank the water, studying her over the rim. She'd gotten used to that look, the way he watched people, reading them like he read weather patterns or cattle behavior. Most of the time, it made her self-conscious. Today, it just made her tired. You look exhausted, he said. I'm managing a ranch I don't know how to manage. Of course I'm exhausted. Then stop. Let Hayes handle it. Hayes is handling the cattle and the hands and a dozen other things. Someone needs to deal with the paperwork, the correspondence, the supplies. She sat on the edge of the bed without thinking about it, too worn out to maintain proper distance. We got a letter from the lawyer in Denver about the water rights case. His expression sharpened. And he thinks he can get the bank records, prove that someone accessed your father's safe deposit box after his death. But he needs time and he needs a retainer we don't currently have. How much? $50. Rhett closed his eyes. We don't have $50 to spare right now. I know. I checked the accounts. She'd spent 2 hours going over the numbers, trying to find money that didn't exist. We could sell some cattle early, but that means taking a loss on the price. Or we could wait until after the Denver shipment, but that's 6 weeks out, and the lawyer needs an answer in 2. What do you think we should do? The question surprised her. He'd been asking her opinion more often lately, but this felt different, weightier, like he was testing her judgment on something that actually mattered. I think we take the loss, she said slowly. Sell 20 head to the buyer in Santa Fe. It's not ideal, but losing the water rights would cost us more in the long run than a few $100s now. He was quiet for a moment, thinking it through. Then he nodded. Do it. Send Hayes to Santa Fe with the cattle. Tell him to get the best price he can, but take whatever they offer, if it gets us the retainer money. Relief washed through her. You're sure? You just gave me the same advice I'd give myself. Yeah, I'm sure. He shifted position, winced. Anything else I should know about? Carter thinks we have a predator problem in the north pasture. Something took down a calf last night, and the Miller boy's asking about Thompson's wages. Apparently he had family back east who might need the money. Pay them out of the household account. Full wages through the end of the month. His voice went rough. Thompson was a good man. His family shouldn't suffer for my mistakes. It wasn't your fault. I led him into an ambush. That makes it my fault. He looked away, jaw tight. Add his name to the ledger, under the others. What others? The men who've died working for me. My father kept a list. I've kept it going. He gestured vaguely toward the office. Bottom drawer of the desk, black leather book. Olivia had seen that book during her organizing but hadn't opened it, assuming it was personal correspondence. Now she understood what it was. A memorial. A weight he carried. How many names? She asked quietly. 7, including Thompson. He met her eyes. This is a dangerous business, Olivia. People get hurt, get killed. I try to minimize the risk, but I can't eliminate it. You should know that before you... He stopped. Before I what? Before you decide if this life is something you can live with. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. He wasn't just talking about the ranch anymore. I already decided, she said, the moment I helped you back to bed instead of letting you collapse in the hallway. The moment I took over the books and the correspondence and all the things you couldn't do because you were unconscious. She held his gaze. I'm not going anywhere, Rhett. Not unless you tell me to leave. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, then something warmer, more vulnerable. I'm not telling you to leave. Good. Because I have opinions about how you're running things, and you're going to hear all of them, whether you want to or not. That surprised a real laugh out of him, cut short by pain as his ribs protested. Like what? Like you need to hire 2 more hands at minimum. We're understaffed, which means everyone's overworked, which means mistakes happen. Like the fence that went down during the storm. That should have been reinforced weeks ago, but no one had time. Can't afford 2 more hands right now. You can't afford not to have them. 1 injury, 1 person leaving, and the whole operation falls apart. It's a risk you can't keep taking. She stood, paced to the window. And you need to renegotiate the contract with the Denver grain supplier. They've been overcharging for 3 years. I wrote to 2 other suppliers for quotes. Both came back lower. You did that without asking me? You were unconscious. Someone had to make decisions. She turned to face him. If you have a problem with it, fire me. Otherwise, let me do my job. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. A real one this time, not the careful half-expression he usually offered. You've changed. People tend to change when they're running on 4 hours of sleep and constant terror. Not that kind of change. You're more... He searched for the word. Confident. Like you've figured out you're good at this. I'm terrified every second that I'm making the wrong call. But you're making the call anyway. That's what matters. He gestured her closer. Come here. She approached cautiously, unsure what he wanted. When she was close enough, he reached out, caught her hand. His palm was warm, calloused, familiar in a way that made her chest tight. Thank you, he said quietly. For keeping things together, for not falling apart when I couldn't be there, for... He paused. For staying. You don't need to thank me. Yeah, I do. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture that felt more intimate than it probably should. I know this isn't what you signed up for. Office work is one thing. Running a ranch while I'm laid up, dealing with my mess, that's something else entirely. I told you before. Your mess became my mess the moment they burned the barn. She squeezed his hand, then gently extracted hers before the moment could stretch into something she wasn't ready to name. Get some rest. I need to write to those suppliers and draft the response to the lawyer. Olivia. Rest, Rhett. I'll check on you later. She left before he could say whatever he'd been about to say, closing the door behind her and leaning against it for a moment. Her hand still tingled where he'd touched it. Her heart was doing something complicated and inconvenient in her chest. Maria was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed, expression knowing. Don't, Olivia said. Don't what? Whatever you're about to say, just don't. Maria's mouth twitched. I wasn't going to say anything. You were thinking it loudly. Can't help what I think. Maria fell into step beside her as she headed toward the office. But For what it's not worth mentioning, you two are dancing around each other like fools at a barn raising. There's nothing to dance around. He's my employer. He's a man who looks at you like you hung the moon, and you look at him like you're trying to figure out if that's allowed. Maria stopped at the office door. Life's too short for that kind of hesitation, girl, especially out here. It's complicated. It's only complicated if you make it complicated. Maria shrugged. But what do I know? I'm just an old woman who's been watching people fall in love for 60 years. She left before Olivia could protest that no one was falling in love, which was probably wise because the protest would have been a lie and they both knew it. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Hayes took 20 head to Santa Fe and came back with enough money for the lawyer's retainer plus a little extra. The contracts with the new grain suppliers were signed. 2 new hands were hired. One from Grafton, who came with references from 3 other ranches, another who'd been working for the McAllisters but needed a fresh start after their barn burned. Rhett graduated from bed to chair to carefully supervised walks around the house. By the end of the second week, he was insisting on making it to the office, where he sat and reviewed everything Olivia had done in his absence. She stood by the window, trying not to look nervous while he flipped through ledgers and correspondence, trying not to care what he thought, even though she cared desperately. You reorganized the filing system, he said finally. The old one didn't make sense. Everything was mixed together chronologically instead of by category. And you contacted 4 new potential buyers. We were too dependent on Denver and Santa Fe. Diversification reduces risk. You also found a discrepancy in the property tax assessment. It says here we've been paying for acreage we don't actually own. 400 acres that belong to the McAllisters. The surveyor made an error 20 years ago and no one caught it. I wrote to the county assessor. He's correcting the records. Rhett closed the ledger, looked up at her. How much are we getting back? In overpayment? About $200, plus reduced taxes going forward. $200. He said it slowly, like he was testing the reality of it. You found $200 we didn't know we had. Found is a strong word. It was always ours. The county just needed to be informed of their error. He stood, slower than he used to, but steadier than yesterday, and crossed to where she stood. Olivia, you've done more in 3 weeks than anyone else could have done in 3 months, including me. I just organized things, that's all. You saved the ranch. He said it simply, like it was obvious. Between the grain contracts, the tax correction, the new buyers, you've set us up better than we've been in years. And you did it while I was useless. You weren't useless. You were healing. I was unconscious, and then I was weak. Same difference. He was close now, close enough that she could see the scar forming at his temple, the lingering shadows under his eyes. I owe you more than wages. You don't owe me anything. The hell I don't. His voice was rough, intense. You could have left, could have taken what money you could carry and run while I was laid up. No one would have blamed you. Instead, you stayed and you fought and you... He stopped, seemed to be searching for words. You made this place better. I did what needed doing. That's what makes you remarkable. You don't even see it. He reached up, almost touched her face, then dropped his hand like he'd remembered something. I need to tell you something about what happened out there, in the canyon. The shift in topic was so abrupt it took her a moment to adjust. You don't have to... Yeah, I do. You deserve to know. He moved to the desk, leaned against it carefully. The ambush wasn't random. Someone told Jimmy we were coming. Someone who knew our plans. Olivia's stomach dropped. One of the hands? Had to be. No one else knew the route we were taking or when. His expression was grim. I've been going over it in my head, trying to figure out who would sell us out, who Jimmy could have gotten to. Maybe it wasn't deliberate. Maybe someone talked without realizing. Jimmy doesn't work on accident. He's smart, calculated. If he knew we were coming, it's because someone told him deliberately. Rhett's hands clenched on the desk edge. Thompson died because of it, because I trusted the wrong person. You don't know that for certain. I know enough. He looked at her. Which means we have a traitor somewhere on this ranch. And until I figure out who, none of us are safe. The words settled like a weight in the room. Olivia thought about the hands she'd been working with. The men who'd followed her orders and helped keep things running. Carter with his easy smile. Rodriguez with his quiet competence. Young Miller, who was barely more than a boy. Hayes, who'd been here longer than anyone. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Watch. Wait. See who makes a mistake." He straightened, winced slightly. "In the meantime, I need you to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't trust anyone completely. Not even the people who seem trustworthy. That's a hard way to live. It's the only way to survive when you don't know who your enemies are." A knock at the door interrupted them. Maria poked her head in, expression tight. "Rider coming in. Fast. Looks urgent." They made it to the porch in time to see a horse thunder into the yard, its rider pulling up hard enough to make the animal slide. It was one of the McAllister boys, the older one, maybe 20, his face flushed and scared. "Mr. Calloway," he gasped. "You need to come. Jimmy's men hit our place again. Pa's hurt bad and they're threatening to burn the whole thing down if he doesn't sign over the water rights." Rhett's expression went cold and hard. "When?" "Now. They're there now. Gave us till sundown to decide." Olivia grabbed Rhett's arm before he could move. "You're not healed enough for this." "I'm healed enough." He pulled free, already shouting for Hayes. "Get the men mounted. Everything we've got." "Rhett, please. If I don't go, McAllister dies and Jimmy gets a foothold on water rights that could strangle every ranch in this valley." He looked at her, and his expression softened just slightly. "I have to." "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. You need every gun you can get. I can shoot. Not well, but well enough." She held his gaze, refusing to back down. "And you're still weak. Someone needs to watch your back." "Olivia, I'm coming. Argue about it on the way or accept it now, but either way, I'm coming." For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded once, sharp and frustrated. "Fine, but you stay back, behind cover. You do not engage unless there's no other choice. Clear?" "Clear." The ride to the McAllister ranch took 30 minutes at a pace that had Olivia's teeth rattling and her grip white-knuckled on the reins of the horse Hayes had saddled for her. Rhett led the way, with Rodriguez and Carter flanking him, and Olivia bringing up the rear with Hayes and the two new hands. "You know how to use that rifle?" Hayes asked, nodding at the weapon strapped to her saddle. "Hit 1 bottle out of 6 in practice." "That's terrible odds." "I'm aware. Just make sure you're aiming at the right people if you do shoot." They crested a ridge, and the McAllister place came into view below. A smaller operation than Calloway's, but neat and well-maintained. Or it had been. Now smoke rose from one of the outbuildings, and dark shapes moved in the yard. Too many to count from this distance. Rhett held up a hand, stopping the group. "Hayes, take 2 men around the east side. Rodriguez, west. Wait for my signal." "What signal?" Rodriguez asked. "You'll know it when you see it." Rhett turned to Olivia. "You stay here. I mean it. Do not come down until it's over. And if it goes wrong, then you ride back to the ranch and tell Maria to lock everything down." He held her gaze. "Promise me." "I promise." It was a lie, and they both probably knew it, but he didn't have time to argue. He wheeled his horse and started down the slope, Carter following close behind. Olivia watched them approach the ranch house, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She could see figures in the yard turning, weapons being raised, could see Rhett stop maybe 50 yards out, sitting tall in his saddle despite the healing wound in his side. His voice carried up the ridge, loud and clear. "Jimmy, get out here and talk like a man instead of hiding behind your crew." A pause. Then a figure emerged from the house, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of swagger that came from too much power and too little opposition. Jimmy, she assumed. Even from this distance, she could tell he was smiling. "Calloway, heard you got yourself shot. Figured you'd be smart enough to stay home and recover." Figured wrong. Rhett's hand rested casually on his thigh, inches from his gun. "Whatever dispute you have with McAllister, you settle it with him directly, not by terrorizing his family. Ain't a dispute. It's business. McAllister's got water rights I need. He's being stubborn about selling. I'm just helping him see reason. By burning his property and beating his son. Persuasion takes many forms." Jimmy took a step forward. "But seeing as you're here, maybe we can talk about your water rights too. Save me the trouble of convincing you later." "I'm not selling. Everyone sells eventually, it's just a question of price." Jimmy's smile widened. "How much would it take, Calloway? Your ranch? Your cattle?" That pretty little thing you've got keeping house for you? Rhett's expression didn't change, but Olivia saw his shoulders tighten. Leave her out of this. Why? She's part of the equation now. Here she's been running things while you were laid up. Must be real capable. Jimmy's tone turned mocking. Or maybe just real accommodating. The implication was clear enough that Olivia felt her face heat with anger, but Rhett just sat there, still and calm, like he was carved from stone. You've got two choices, he said quietly. Walk away now, or deal with the consequences. Consequences? Jimmy laughed. You got what? 6 men? I got 15. Do the math, Calloway. I did. That's why I brought friends. The signal came in the form of rifle shots, warning shots, fired high, from both sides of the property simultaneously. Hayes and Rodriguez in position and armed. Jimmy's men scattered, diving for cover, suddenly aware that they were surrounded instead of surrounding. The smile dropped from Jimmy's face. You son of a... Rhett's gun was out before Jimmy finished the sentence. Tell your men to drop their weapons, now, or this gets real ugly, real fast. For a moment, Olivia thought Jimmy might actually try to fight. Thought this would dissolve into a bloodbath that would leave everyone dead or dying. Her hand found the rifle, pulling it from its holster with shaking fingers. Then Jimmy raised his hand slowly. Stand down, he called to his crew. All of you, stand down. Weapons hit the ground. Hands went up. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on, but no one fired. Rhett kept his gun trained on Jimmy. You're going to leave. You're not coming back. And if I hear about you terrorizing anyone in this valley again, rancher, homesteader, anyone, I'm coming for you personally. We clear? This isn't over, Calloway. Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet. Rhett jerked his head toward the horses. Get on. Get out. Don't test me. Jimmy stared at him for a long, dangerous moment. Then he spat in the dirt and turned, stalking toward his horse. His men followed, mounting up in silence, their weapons abandoned in the dirt. They rode out slowly, trying to salvage pride from defeat. Olivia watched until they disappeared over the ridge, barely breathing, her hands locked on the rifle so tight her fingers ached. Only when they were truly gone did Rhett holster his weapon. He swayed slightly in the saddle, catching himself on the pommel. Olivia was down the ridge and beside him before she consciously decided to move. You're bleeding again. I'm fine. You're not. She could see blood seeping through his shirt where the wound had torn open. You need to get home. Now. Hayes rode up, his expression grim. Boss, she's right. You're white as milk. McAllister. I'll check on McAllister, Hayes said. You get yourself patched up before Maria has all our heads. Rhett looked like he wanted to argue, but his body had other ideas. He nodded once tightly. All right, but someone stays here tonight. Make sure Jimmy doesn't come back. I'll handle it. Hayes looked at Olivia. Get him home, miss, and try to keep him from doing anything else stupid on the way. The ride back was slower, quieter. Rhett sat hunched in his saddle, breathing carefully, while Olivia rode beside him and tried not to think about everything that could have gone wrong. That was too close, she said finally, but it worked. This time. Next time you might not be so lucky. She kept her eyes on the path ahead. You risked everything on a bluff. Wasn't entirely a bluff. We had position, numbers on our side once Hayes and Rodriguez flanked them. He shifted, grimaced. And Jimmy's smart enough to know when he's beaten. For now, but he meant what he said. This isn't over. Nothing's ever really over out here. You just push problems down the road and hope you're ready when they come back. He glanced at her. You did good today, holding position, not panicking. I was terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what needs doing anyway. They made it back to the ranch as the sun touched the horizon, painting everything gold and red. Maria was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, her expression promising a lecture that would blister paint. You tore your stitches, didn't you? She said as Rhett dismounted. Probably. And you knew you would, but you went anyway. Had to. Maria sighed, deep and long-suffering. Get inside, both of you, and next time you decide to play hero, maybe give me some warning so I can have the medical supplies ready. She herded them into the house, muttering under her breath about stubborn men and foolish women who enabled them. Olivia helped Rhett to his room, then stood awkwardly in the doorway while Maria cut away his shirt to examine the damage. Out, Maria ordered without looking up. I'll call you when he's patched. Olivia retreated to the office, suddenly exhausted in a way that went bone deep. She sank into the chair behind the desk and let her head fall into her hands, the adrenaline finally draining away and leaving nothing but shakes in its wake. They'd faced down Jimmy's entire crew, could have died, should have died, by any reasonable calculation. But they'd won, for now. And she'd ridden into danger without hesitation because Rhett had needed her there. Because somewhere along the line, his fights had become her fights. His ranch had become her home. His life had become tangled with hers in ways she couldn't separate even if she wanted to. Which she didn't. Not anymore. The realization should have scared her. Instead, it just felt inevitable, like something she'd known for weeks but only now had the courage to admit. She loved him, loved this place, loved the life she was building here, however fragile and dangerous it was. And tomorrow, when he was healed enough to hear it, she was going to tell him. Tomorrow never came the way Olivia planned. She woke the next morning to raised voices downstairs, angry, urgent, the kind that pulled her from sleep with her heart already racing. She dressed quickly and took the stairs 2 at a time, emerging into the main room to find Hayes and Rodriguez squared off near the fireplace, both red-faced and tense. "You're a damn liar," Hayes was saying, his voice shaking with fury. "I'm telling you what I saw," Rodriguez shot back. "You want to call me a liar? That's your business, but I know what I know. Both of you shut up." Rhett's voice cut through the argument like a blade. He stood in the doorway to his room, still pale but upright, his expression carved from granite. "Hayes, what's this about?" Hayes turned and Olivia saw something she'd never seen in the older man's face before. Hurt, deep, and personal. "Rodriguez is saying I'm the one who sold you out to Jimmy, that I'm the traitor." The word landed like a physical blow. Olivia's stomach dropped. "I saw him," Rodriguez insisted. 2 nights before we rode out to the canyon, meeting with someone in town, behind the saloon where nobody goes. "I was buying supplies," Hayes said through gritted teeth, "same as I do every month. You want to see the receipts?" "Receipts can be faked. So can accusations." Hayes took a step forward and Rodriguez's hand moved toward his gun. "You trying to deflect blame? Maybe you're the one who talked." "That's enough." Rhett's voice cracked like a whip. Both men froze. "Rodriguez, you saw Hayes talking to someone. Who?" Couldn't see clear, was too dark. But they were passing something, looked like money. "I paid for grain," Hayes said, his voice raw. "Same supplier I've used for 3 years. You can ask him yourself." Convenient that your supplier happens to be Jimmy's cousin. The silence that followed was absolute. Olivia saw the color drain from Hayes's face, saw Rhett's expression go very, very still. "You knew about that?" Rhett asked quietly. "Known for years," Hayes said. "Never mattered before. Man's entitled to buy from whoever he wants, and Tom's always given us fair prices. The fact that he's related to Jimmy don't change the quality of his grain." "But you never mentioned it." "Didn't seem relevant." Hayes looked between Rodriguez and Rhett, and Olivia could see him realizing how bad this looked. "Boss, I swear on everything I hold dear, I didn't betray you. I'd sooner cut my own throat." "Swearing don't mean much when there's blood on the ground," Rodriguez said. Olivia found her voice before she consciously decided to speak. "This is wrong." All 3 men turned to look at her. She stepped into the room fully, her mind racing through everything she knew, everything she'd observed over the past months. "Hayes has been here for decades," she said. "He stayed when he could have left after Rhett's father died. He helped build this place from nothing. Why would he betray it now?" "Money," Rodriguez said. "Jimmy's got plenty of it. Maybe Hayes got tired of working for wages when he could get paid better elsewhere. Then why is he still here?" Olivia moved to the desk, pulled out the ledger she'd been maintaining. "I've been tracking all the household accounts, every supply purchase, every transaction. Hayes's purchases match exactly with what we need, when we need it. Nothing extra, nothing suspicious. If he was taking money from Jimmy, where is it?" Rodriguez frowned. "Could be hiding it." "Where?" "I've organized every inch of this ranch's finances. There's nowhere to hide that kind of money without it showing up somewhere." She looked at Rhett. "And there's something else. The night of the attack, when they burned the barn, Hayes was the one organizing the water line, directing the men. If he was working with Jimmy, why would he help save the barn?" "Could be covering," Rodriguez muttered, but he sounded less certain. Or he's exactly who he's always been, Olivia said. Loyal, hardworking, and being accused because someone saw something that looked suspicious but wasn't. Rhett was quiet, studying Hayes with that intense, measuring gaze. The older man stood straight, meeting his eyes without flinching, but Olivia could see the hurt there, the betrayal of being doubted after all these years. Rodriguez, Rhett said finally, you're sure about what you saw? I saw him talking to someone, passing money. That's a fact. But you didn't see who he was talking to, didn't hear what was said, didn't confirm it was anything more than a supply transaction. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. No, but nothing. You're making assumptions based on incomplete information. Rhett turned to Hayes. I believe you, but I need you to prove it. Go to town today. Bring back receipts from every transaction you made that night. Talk to the supplier. Get him to confirm what you bought and when. You want me to prove my innocence, Hayes said flatly. I want to close this question before it poisons everything we've built here. Rhett's voice was firm, but not unkind. Can you do that? Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yeah, I can do that. He looked at Rodriguez. And when I come back with proof, you're going to apologize. If you come back with proof, I'll apologize on my knees, Rodriguez said. Hayes left without another word, saddling his horse and riding out before the sun had fully cleared the horizon. The tension in his wake was thick enough to choke on. Olivia found Rhett in the office an hour later, staring at papers without really seeing them. She closed the door behind her. You don't actually think Hayes betrayed you, she said. No, but I can't ignore the possibility just because I don't want it to be true. He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. If it's not Hayes, then who? Rodriguez has been here 2 years, Carter even less. The new hands I barely know. What if it's none of them? Then how did Jimmy know we were coming? Olivia had been thinking about that all morning, turning it over in her mind. What if someone overheard? These walls aren't thick. The bunkhouse is close to the house. If you were discussing plans with Hayes and Rodriguez inside, someone could have been listening outside. That's a lot of what ifs. So is assuming one of your men is a traitor. She sat on the edge of the desk. You're looking for betrayal because it's easier than accepting that sometimes things just go wrong, that good plans fail and good men die without it being anyone's fault. He looked up at her sharply. You think Thompson's death was just bad luck? I think it was tragedy. I think Jimmy's smarter and more ruthless than you anticipated. I think ambushes happen. She held his gaze. But tearing apart the loyalty of the men you have left won't bring Thompson back. It'll just destroy what you've built. So what do I do? Just trust everyone and hope I'm not making a mistake? You trust the people who've earned it, and you accept that trust means risk. She reached out, covered his hand with hers. That's what you did with me. You didn't know if I'd steal from you or run off or fail completely, but you trusted me anyway. Why is it different with them? He was quiet, his hand warm under hers, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he turned his palm up and laced their fingers together. Because losing you would hurt worse, he said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Olivia's breath caught. Rhett, I know this isn't the time. I know we've got bigger problems to deal with, but I need you to know. He stopped, seemed to be gathering courage. When I was lying in that canyon, bleeding out, the only thing I could think about was getting back here, to you, to see if, maybe, a knock at the door interrupted him. Maria's voice came through, sharp and urgent. Rhett, you need to see this. He pulled his hand back and the moment shattered. They both stood, following Maria outside to where a rider was approaching. Not Hayes, but someone Olivia didn't recognize. Middle-aged, well-dressed, with the kind of bearing that suggested education and authority. The man dismounted, removed his hat. Mr. Calloway, I'm Samuel Pearson, attorney from Denver. We've been corresponding about the water rights case. Rhett's expression shifted to cautious interest. Didn't expect you to make the trip personally. Normally I wouldn't, but I have news that required immediate delivery. Pearson pulled a folder from his saddlebag. I was able to obtain the bank records you requested. Took some legal maneuvering, but I got them. And? Your father's safe deposit box was accessed 3 times after his death, twice by someone using a forged key. All the contents were removed, including the original deed to your water rights. Pearson opened the folder, showed them documents covered in official stamps and signatures. I tracked the forger. He's willing to testify that he made the key for a man named Walter Miller. Olivia saw Rhett's jaw tighten. Miller. Of course it's Miller. The same Miller who's now claiming your water rights are invalid, Pearson continued. With the deed missing, he thought he could manufacture a legal dispute and force you to settle or sell, but we have documentation of the theft, testimony from the forger, and… He smiled. I found another copy of the original deed. Your father had filed it with the Territorial Land Office 20 years ago. It's been sitting in an archive in Santa Fe this whole time. So the case is over, Rhett said slowly, like he couldn't quite believe it. Not just over. Miller's facing criminal charges for theft and fraud. His claim to the water rights is void, and you're entitled to compensation for legal fees and damages. Pearson handed him the folder. Congratulations, Mr. Calloway. You won. After Pearson left, with a retainer fee that made Olivia wince, but Rhett paid without hesitation, they stood in the yard processing what had just happened.
3 years, Rhett said. 3 years of Miller trying to squeeze me out, and it was fraud the whole time. At least now you know, Olivia said. And you have legal protection going forward. Thanks to you. If you hadn't found that letter, hadn't pushed me to respond. He shook his head. I'd have lost everything. You'd have found another way. Maybe. Maybe not. He turned to face her fully. Earlier, before Pearson arrived, I was trying to tell you something. Her heart started beating faster. I remember. Let me finish it now, before something else interrupts. He took a breath. When I found you in that valley, I thought I was just doing the decent thing, helping someone in trouble. But you changed everything, Olivia. The way you see problems, the way you refuse to give up, the way you… He stopped, started again. I'm not good at this. Saying what I feel. Maria says I'm about as romantic as a fence post. Maria says a lot of things. But she's right about this. I'm clumsy and I'm damaged and I've got enemies and debts and a ranch that takes everything I have just to keep running. He stepped closer. But I want you here. Not as an employee. Not as someone I rescued, as… He faltered. As what? Olivia asked, even though she thought she knew. Hoped she knew. As my partner in everything, the ranch, the fights, the future, all of it. His eyes searched hers. I'm asking you to build a life here. With me. If you'll have it. The world seemed to narrow to just the two of them, standing in the dusty yard with the sun warm on their shoulders and the ranch spreading out around them like a promise. I'm difficult, Olivia said. I argue with you constantly. I reorganize your systems without asking. I make decisions that aren't mine to make. I know. And I'm still learning. I make mistakes. I don't know half of what I should about running cattle or managing land or… Olivia. He caught her hands, held them gently. Are you trying to talk me out of this or yourself? I don't know. Both? She laughed, shaky and uncertain. I came here with nothing. I'm still practically nothing. What do I have to offer you that you couldn't find in someone who actually knows this life? You have yourself. That's enough. He squeezed her hands. More than enough. You're the smartest person I've ever met. You saved this ranch when I couldn't. You faced down armed men without flinching. You took a disaster and turned it into something better than it was before you arrived. His voice went rough. And somewhere along the way I fell in love with you. So the real question is, do you want this? Do you want me? The answer had been growing in her chest for weeks, maybe months, since the moment he'd ridden into that valley and given her a chance when she had nothing left. Since he'd trusted her with his ranch and his books and his wounded pride. Since he'd looked at her like she mattered, like she was valuable, like she was home. Yes, she said. I want this. I want you. I want all of it, even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. She stepped closer until there was barely any space between them. I love you, Rhett Calloway, and I'm not going anywhere. He kissed her then, careful and sure, like he'd been waiting for permission. She kissed him back, tasting dust and coffee and something that felt like coming home after a long journey. His arms came around her, solid and warm, and for the first time since she'd stepped off that stagecoach into chaos, Olivia felt completely safe. When they finally broke apart, Maria was watching from the porch with her arms crossed,
and an expression that managed to be both approving and exasperated. "About time," she called. "I was starting to think I'd have to lock you in a room together until you figured it out." "We figured it out," Rhett called back. I can see that. Try to maintain some dignity. The hands are watching." Sure enough, several faces had appeared around the barn and bunkhouse, grinning and whispering. Olivia felt her face heat, but she didn't step away from Rhett. Let them see. Let them know. She wasn't hiding anymore. Hayes returned near sunset with a saddlebag full of receipts and a very contrite supplier who confirmed every detail of the grain purchase. Rodriguez apologized exactly as promised, on his knees in the yard in front of everyone, his pride thoroughly crushed. "I was wrong," he said. "I let suspicion turn into accusation without proof. That's not the kind of man I want to be." Hayes accepted the apology with quiet grace, but the damage had been done. Trust, once broken, took time to rebuild. Olivia watched the careful distance between the two men over dinner and made a note to find ways to put them back together. The ranch needed unity, not fractures. That night, after the hands had retreated to the bunkhouse and Maria had gone to bed, Rhett and Olivia sat on the porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "There's something I need to tell you," Olivia said, "about Philadelphia, about why I really left. You don't have to. I want to." She pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. "My stepmother didn't just cut me off financially. She told everyone I'd stolen from my father, spread lies that made it impossible for me to find work or keep friends. I left because staying meant fighting a battle I couldn't win." "Did you steal?" "No. But she had lawyers and money and a story that sounded more believable than the truth." Olivia looked at him. "I'm telling you this because you should know. I'm not some innocent victim who did everything right. I ran away instead of fighting, came west because I was desperate, not brave. You think running away disqualifies you from being brave? Doesn't it? You got on a stage heading into territory you didn't understand, with no guarantee of safety or success. You survived an attack that killed a man. You stood up to gossip and judgment and built something new when everything you knew was gone." He reached over, took her hand. "That's not running away. That's starting over. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yeah, running away means giving up. Starting over means refusing to let the past define your future." He squeezed her hand. "You didn't give up, Olivia. You fought back the only way you could, by leaving a place that didn't deserve you and finding one that did." The words settled something in her chest that had been restless for months, maybe years. The guilt she'd been carrying, that she'd failed, that she'd taken the coward's way out, began to ease. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me as more than my mistakes." "Same to you." He pulled her closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "We're all just trying to be better than we were yesterday. That's all anyone can do." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the valley settle into night. In the distance, a coyote called. Closer, cattle shifted and settled. The ranch breathed around them, alive and demanding, and theirs. "When should we tell people?" Olivia asked. "About us?" "Maria already knows. The hands probably figured it out the second we kissed in the yard." He smiled against her hair. "But we should make it official, proper. Give the town something to really gossip about." "What did you have in mind?" "Marry me." She pulled back to look at him. "That's not a question. Marry me?" He tried again, and this time there was uncertainty in his voice, vulnerability. "I know it's fast. I know we should probably wait and court properly and do all the things people are supposed to do, but I don't want to wait. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're here because you chose to be, not because you're employed to be. People will say I trapped you, that I manipulated a wounded man into proposing. Let them say it. We'll know the truth. They'll say I'm after your money. I don't have that much money, and you're the one who found most of it anyway." He cupped her face in his hands. "I don't care what they say, Olivia. I only care what you say. So say yes, please." She thought about everything that had led her here. The lies and the loss and the desperate journey west. The attack in the valley and the terror and the moment she'd thought she would die. The slow building of something new from absolutely nothing. The discovery that she was stronger than she'd known, braver than she'd believed, capable of more than anyone had given her credit for. And she thought about this man who'd saved her not once, but over and over, in ways both large and small, who'd trusted her with his livelihood and his heart, who looked at her like she was exactly who he'd been waiting for, even though he hadn't known he was waiting. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He kissed her again, deeper this time, with a joy that felt like light breaking through clouds. When they finally came up for air, they were both laughing, giddy with the impossibility and rightness of it all. Maria appeared in the doorway, holding a lamp. "Are you two going to sit out here all night, or come inside like civilized people?" "We're getting married," Rhett announced. "I know, I heard." Maria's expression softened into something almost tender. "About time you made an honest woman of her. Lord knows she's put up with enough from you to earn it." "We haven't set a date," Olivia said. "Next month," Maria said firmly. "Give me time to make arrangements, but not so much time that something else goes wrong and delays it." "You don't think that's too fast?" "Child, at your age nothing's too fast, and Rhett's not getting any younger either." She turned to go back inside, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad it's you. You're good for him, good for this place. Welcome to the family." She disappeared inside, leaving them alone again under the vast expanse of stars. "She's right about one thing," Rhett said. "You're good for this place. You made it better just by being here." "We made it better," Olivia corrected. "Together." And that, she was learning, was what love actually meant out here. Not grand gestures or perfect moments, but the hard work of building something worthwhile with another person. The choice to stay when leaving would be easier. The faith that tomorrow would be better because you'd face it together. The wedding happened on a clear morning in early autumn, when the heat had finally broken and the air carried the promise of change. They kept it small, just the ranch hands, a few neighbors, and a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through Grafton at exactly the right time. Olivia wore a dress Maria had altered from her own wedding gown, simple but beautiful, cream-colored with lace at the collar. Rhett wore his best suit, which he'd owned for years but rarely had occasion to use. They stood in front of the ranch house with the valley spreading out behind them and spoke vows that promised partnership and loyalty and a future built on more than just survival. Hayes stood up as witness, his earlier hurt forgiven, if not entirely forgotten. Rodriguez passed around whiskey afterward, grinning and making toasts that grew increasingly elaborate and embarrassing as the afternoon wore on. The town talked, of course. Betty Parsons and her circle had opinions about the speed of the courtship, the impropriety of the living arrangements before the marriage, the general scandal of it all. But their opinions mattered less and less as the weeks passed and life moved forward with the relentless momentum of the seasons. Winter came early that year, harsh and unforgiving. They lost some cattle to cold and predators, but fewer than expected. The new hands proved their worth. The contracts Olivia had negotiated paid dividends. The ranch weathered the worst of it and emerged into spring stronger than it had been in years. Jimmy's crew disappeared from the territory after word spread about the failed ambush at the McAllister place. Rumor said they'd moved north into Wyoming, where the pickings were easier and the ranchers less organized. Miller faced trial for fraud and theft, lost everything, and left the valley in disgrace. The water rights were secured, legally and permanently. Small victories. But out here, small victories were how you survived. Olivia settled into her role as more than just office manager. She became the voice of reason in ranch decisions, the mediator in disputes between hands, the one who remembered details Rhett forgot and planned for contingencies he didn't see coming. She learned to ride properly, to shoot accurately, to read weather and cattle behavior, and the 100 other small skills that made the difference between thriving and just getting by. And she learned that belonging wasn't something you were born into or given. It was something you earned through work and sacrifice, and the choice to stay when staying was hard. Spring brought new life, calves born healthy, grass growing green, the promise of profitable sales in Denver and Santa Fe. And it brought something else, too. Something Olivia had been quietly suspecting for a few weeks, but only confirmed when Maria cornered her in the kitchen one morning with knowing eyes. "You're carrying," Maria said. Not a question. Olivia's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. "I think so. Maybe. I'm not completely sure." "I'm sure. I've seen it enough times to know." Maria's expression was warm, approving. "Does Rhett know?" "Not yet. I wanted to be certain before I said anything." "Well, get certain. That man deserves to know he's going to be a father." Olivia told him that night, After dinner, when they were alone in the bedroom they now shared. She watched his face carefully, trying to gauge his reaction, hoping for joy, bracing for fear. What she got was both, tangled together in an expression so complex she couldn't parse it. "You're sure?" he asked. "Maria's sure, and I think so. Yes." He sat down on the edge of the bed, processing. She waited, giving him time, her heart beating too fast. "I don't know how to be a father," he said finally. "Mine was a disaster. I don't have a model for doing this right. Neither do I. My father was kind but distant. My stepmother was—" She shook her head. "We'll figure it out together, the same way we figured out everything else." "What if I'm not good at it?" "Then you'll be not good at it while trying your best. That's all anyone can do." She sat beside him, took his hand. "Are you happy about this?" He looked at her and slowly, like sunrise, a smile spread across his face. Yeah, I'm happy. Terrified, but happy." "Me too." He pulled her into his arms, held her tight, and she felt the tension drain from both of them. They sat there in the quiet, contemplating a future that had expanded in ways neither of them had planned, but both of them wanted. "We'll need to expand the house," he said eventually. "Add a room for the baby. Maybe 2, in case—" He stopped. "In case there are more." "More? I'm just saying, we might be good at this, might want to keep going." She laughed, the sound bright and free. "Let's survive the first one before we plan for more." "Fair enough." The baby came in early winter, a girl with dark hair and her mother's determined expression. They named her Emma, after Rhett's mother, and she transformed the ranch in ways both exhausting and wonderful. The hands competed to make her smile. Maria appointed herself grandmother and ran the household with even more iron efficiency than before. And Rhett, who'd been terrified of being a bad father, turned out to be surprisingly good at it, patient and gentle and fiercely protective in a way that made Olivia fall in love with him all over again. Life became measured in different rhythms after that. Not just the seasons of cattle and crops, but the milestones of a child growing. First smile, first word, first steps. The ordinary miracles that made all the hardship worthwhile. The ranch prospered in ways that felt almost improbable, given where they'd started. The contracts expanded, the herd grew, they hired more hands, built new structures, invested in improvements that paid returns. Olivia's organizational systems became the model that other ranches tried to copy. Rhett's reputation as a fair but firm operator spread. Together, they built something that mattered, but it wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. They fought sometimes. About money, about decisions, about the stubborn way they each approached problems. Hayes eventually left to start his own smaller operation with their blessing and financial backing. 2 of the hands turned out to be useless and had to be let go. A drought one year cost them dearly. A glut in the market the next year drove prices down. Life out here didn't get easier just because you were happy. It just gave you better reasons to keep fighting. On their 5th anniversary, Rhett took Olivia to the ridge where he'd first seen her surrounded by bandits. They sat on the same rocks, looking out over the same valley, but everything was different now. "I think about that day sometimes," Olivia said. "How close I came to dying right here." "I think about it too. How close I came to not riding this way. I almost went north that morning, almost missed you entirely." "Fate," she said, "or luck, or just the right coincidence at the right time." He pulled her closer. "Whatever it was, I'm grateful for it." "Me too." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I don't know who I'd be if you hadn't stopped. Someone completely different, probably, or dead. You'd have survived somehow. You're too stubborn not to. Maybe. But I wouldn't have had this, the ranch, Emma, you." She tilted her head to look at him. "I wouldn't have had a home. You made this place a home. It was just a ranch before you arrived. It was always more than that. You just needed someone to help you see it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun descend toward the horizon. Emma was with Maria back at the ranch, probably being spoiled with sweets she didn't need. The cattle were settled for the night. The hands were finishing their work. Everything was in its place, running smoothly, because they'd built it that way. "You know what I learned?" Olivia said eventually. "Coming out here, building all this." "What?" "That strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing what needs doing anyway. That home isn't a place you find. It's something you create with people who matter, and that sometimes the worst things that happen to you lead to the best things in your life. That's a lot of learning. I had a good teacher. She kissed him, soft and sure. Thank you for saving me, for trusting me, for loving me, even when I was a mess. You were never a mess. You were just someone figuring things out. He stood, pulled her to her feet. Come on, let's go home. They rode back as the stars began to emerge, the valley darkening around them, the ranch house appearing in the distance with lamplight glowing warm in the windows. Their daughter would be waiting. Maria would have dinner ready. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new reasons to be grateful they'd found each other. The desert didn't care if you were ready, but Olivia had learned how not to care back. Had learned that readiness was a myth, that strength was built one difficult choice at a time, and that the best life wasn't the easiest one. It was the one you fought for with people worth fighting beside. She'd come west with nothing and found everything, not because it was given to her, but because she'd refused to let circumstances define her limits, because she'd taken every setback and turned it into fuel, because she'd learned that survival wasn't the goal, transformation was. And here, in this harsh and beautiful place, with this complicated and wonderful man, she'd transformed into someone she barely recognized from that desperate woman in the valley. Someone stronger, someone capable, someone home. The ranch spread out beneath the stars, a legacy they'd built together and would pass down to Emma and whatever children came after. A place that demanded everything but gave back meaning and purpose, and the kind of deep satisfaction that came from knowing you'd created something worthwhile. Olivia Calloway, because she was a Calloway now, had earned that name through blood and sweat and stubborn refusal to quit, looked at her life and felt nothing but gratitude. For the journey that had brought her here, for the challenges that had forged her, for the love that had saved her in ways both large and small. She'd survived. More than that, she'd thrived. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. The frontier didn't care if you were ready, but ready or not, you could still build something beautiful from the dust.